Xin Yuan was reborn. She was reborn back to the day when she was 13, the day her parents brought home their adopted daughter, Sun Yan. In her previous life, it took her a full 32 years to understand one thing. In this family, she was always the extra one. In her mother's eyes, there was only the gentle and obedient Sun Yan, and her father's smile always first fell on the girl without parents. She pushed herself to the limit, striving for first place, earning scholarships, and living up to everyone's expectations, yet even a phone call when she was sick couldn't earn her a simple take care. In the end, she died alone on a hospital bed, with no one coming to see her. This time around, Xin Yuan wouldn't fight, wouldn't make a fuss, and wouldn't rely on anyone. She watched her mother carefully serving soup to Sun Yan, her father lovingly pick up food to Sun Yan, and the happy family scene of the three of them, then quietly set down her chopsticks and walked away. From today on, she doesn't want this family anymore. She wants to attend the best school, earn the most money, and become the strongest version of herself. She will take back all her expectations from these people and leave without looking back. But she forgot, once a person's heart freezes for too long, it can never be warmed again. When those long-delayed words of "I'm sorry" finally left her lips, she no longer knew how to forgive. When Xin Yuan opened her eyes, she saw the room she had lived in at the age of 13, the pale blue wallpaper on the wall hadn't started to peel with age. Only a few middle school textbooks were on the desk, and the stuffed rabbit that had accompanied her throughout her childhood hadn't even begun to shed. Sunlight squeezed through the slightly open curtain, landing on her hand, warm in a way that felt unreal. She sat up abruptly, her heart pounding so hard it felt like it was about to leap out of her throat. Impossible. She clearly remembered taking her last breath. In the hospital corridor, the harsh white light so intense it felt like it could melt a person, the sound of a nurse wheeling a cart passing by at the end of the corridor, and someone crying. She was too exhausted to even open her eyes. Her heart felt as if someone had ripped out a piece of it, leaving a hollow ache that had persisted for so many years, finally about to stop. And then she was here. Xin Yuan looked down at her hands. Small, delicate, with distinct knuckles, there were no calluses left from years of hard work, no slightly deformed knuckles from long hours at the desk, and certainly no ring she had bought for herself with clenched teeth, only to never have the chance to take it off. Her eyes instantly reddened, not out of sadness, but from a suffocating sense of absurdity that threatened to drown her. She was reborn on the day when all her nightmares began. Footsteps sounded from outside the door, hurried. With a forced, overly familiar warmth, Xin Yuan heard her mother, Zhou Huilan's voice drifting down the hallway. Its tone was the gentle, loving one she'd spent her past life yearning to hear. Yuan's room is the one at the corner on the second floor. It gets the best light. I had the walls repainted specially. Your little sister should like it. In reality, the room faced north and was freezing in the winter. Little sister, the word drove, silent and sharp, straight into Xin Yuan's temple. She closed her eyes, and memories from her past life flooded back like a breached dam. Su Jinyan, she was the daughter of her father's closest friend. After both her parents died in a car accident, leaving her with no one to rely on, the Shin family took her in as their foster daughter. On the day she arrived, Xin Yuan's mother, Zhou Huilan, was more cheerful than ever. Holding the girl's hand, she said, "From now on, you are a daughter of the Shin family." Sitting on the sofa, Xin Yuan's father, Shin Zhengwo, wore a rare, gentle expression and nodded in agreement. And what about Xin Yuan herself? She remembers standing on the stairs, wearing her favorite floral dress, excitedly running down to greet this new sister, only to be stopped by her mother's glance. Yuan, don't make noise. Nian has just arrived and needs peace and quiet." She was only 13 then and didn't understand what favoritism was. All she knew was that the warmth at home seemed to drop to freezing point overnight. Her perfect report card stopped earning praise because coming first was simply expected of her, while Sun Yan making it into the top 10 was treated as a monumental celebration. Her own birthday was forgotten because Sun Yan's fell in the same week, and the family was too busy planning a party for her. When she ran a fever of 39 degrees Celsius, her mother would say, "Just take some medicine, don't disrupt Nian's tutoring." Yet, a mere sneeze from Sun Yan would throw the entire household into a state of high alert. In her past life, it took Xin Yuan 15 years to learn one hard truth. In this family, she would always be the outsider. Later, she studied relentlessly, worked tirelessly, and desperately wanted to prove that she was worthy of love. She got into the best university, joined the top company, and at the age of 28, she bought that small apartment in the city center entirely on her own. She thought that as long as she was outstanding enough, her parents would finally take notice of her. No, never. The year she turned 30, she was diagnosed with an illness and needed a large sum of money for surgery. She called home. Zhou Huilan answered, but before she could even speak, Sun Yan's voice came through the line. "Mom, I'm pregnant. Can you come with me for my prenatal checkup tomorrow?" Zhou Huilan agreed with a smile, then spoke into the phone. Yuan, what is it? Nian is a bit busy here, so make it quick." Xin Yuan opened her mouth, but in the end, she said nothing and gently hung up the Phone, she died at the age of 32, alone in a hospital bed. No one came to see her, not even for a final phone call. The nurse asked for her family's contact information, and she said she had none. The nurse gave that sympathetic look and smiled, saying it was okay. It really is okay. She was used to being alone. Footsteps outside grew closer, and Shin Yuan could hear Zhou Huilan's voice becoming clearer. Nian Nian. This is your room. Take a look and see if you like it. The door swung open. Zhou Huilan entered, holding a young girl's hand. The girl wore a simple white dress, her hair tied into two small braids, with large, expressive eyes. She had a timid, endearing look about her. Sun Yan was 2 years older than Shin Yuan, 15 this year, yet she appeared younger than her age. This was likely due to long-term malnutrition. Her family had struggled financially even when her parents were alive. Nian Nian. This will be your room. Zhou Huilan's tone was unnaturally gentle, a kind of tenderness Shin Yuan had never experienced. Look, the garden is right outside the window. In spring, the roses bloom beautifully. Sun Yan nodded gently, her eyes slightly red, her voice as soft as a mosquito's buzz. Thank you, Auntie. What are you calling me Auntie for? Call me Mom. Zhou Huilan crouched down, holding Sun Yan's hand. From today on, you are my daughter, and this home is your home, understand? Shin Yuan stood at the doorway, quietly watching the scene unfold. In her past life, she would have rushed in, eagerly taken Sun Yan's hand and said, "Hello, sister, I'm Shin Yuan." She would have been desperate to share her toys and snacks with this new sister, and a single cold look from her mother would have left her secretly heartbroken for days. But in this life, Shin Yuan merely leaned against the doorframe, her expression as still and unreadable as stagnant water. Zhou Huilan finally noticed her, glancing up with a detached air. Yuan. This is your sister, Sun Yan. She'll be living with us from now on. Be nice to her. There was no this is your sister, you should be nice to her, and no you two are both mommy's treasures. In her previous life, Shin Yuan didn't notice these details, but now, with a soul that's 31 years old, she understands all too well what these differences signify. Sun Yan shyly looked at Shin Yuan and gave a cautious smile. Hello, you must be Yuan. Auntie, Mom mentioned you to me. Shin Yuan looked at her. The girl from her previous life who had taken away all her family affection, yet a girl who hadn't really done anything wrong. Sun Yan hadn't done anything wrong, she simply existed, was likable, and just happened to grow up to be the kind of daughter Shin's parents wanted, gentle, obedient, coquettish, and dependent, completely different from Shin Yuan, who had never been one to cry or make a fuss, would get up by herself after falling, and wouldn't boast even after scoring first place. It wasn't Sun Yan's fault, it was hers, it was because she wasn't cute enough, not soft enough, not someone who made people want to cherish. Shin Yuan acknowledged with a sound, then turned and walked away. Zhou Huilan frowned. That child, where are her manners? Shin Yuan heard it. Her steps faltered for a moment, but she didn't look back. Her room was on the first floor, the very last one in the corner, facing north. It was freezing in the winter. In her past life, she lived in that room for 10 years and never once asked her parents to switch rooms, because she felt it would be pointless to even bring it up. Sure enough, one time she tentatively said to Zhou Huilan, "Mom, my room is so cold in the winter." Without even looking up, Zhou Huilan replied, "Nian Nian's room faces south, but she's frail and gets cold easily. You'll just have to make do." Make do? She compromised her entire life. Shin Yuan walked into her room, closed the door, and slid down the door panel to sit on the floor. She didn't cry. In her previous life, she had shed all her tears, and now her eyes were dry and aching. She just sat there, her mind a chaotic mess, with thoughts flying everywhere like scattered paper in the wind. What should she do? She was reborn, returned to the age of 13. Before everything had happened, Sun Yan had just arrived. Her parents' favoritism was only beginning, and the wounds were still seeds buried in the soil, not yet taking root. She had a chance to change everything, a chance to prevent the tragedies of her past life from repeating. But what is she supposed to do? Flatter her parents, compete for their favor, mimic Sun Yan, and become a well-behaved, obedient daughter? Shin Yuan tugged at the corner of her mouth, revealing a bitter smile. She tried all that in her past life. She tried every possible way. She came first in her class. She won scholarships. She sent money home every month after she started working. And she even took a month off to go home and care for Zhou Huilan when she fell ill. Yet, the first thing Zhou Huilan said while holding her hand from the sickbed was, "Is Nian Nian busy with work lately? Has she finished that project? Please call her for me and tell her not to overwork herself." She heard it with her own ears. There was no fooling herself. So, for the rest of her life, she wanted to do nothing at all. Someone who didn't love her wouldn't love her, even if she emptied her soul for them. Shin Yuan stood up, walked to the desk, sat down, and pulled a notebook from the drawer. She flipped through found a blank page, removed the cap, and neatly wrote a line. From today on, Xin Yuan will live only for herself. This is the promise made by the 31-year-old soul residing in the 13-year-old body. On the first day of her rebirth, Xin Yuan did something she had never done in her previous life. She called her grandmother on her own initiative. Grandma lived in an old house in the suburbs, alone, with an orange cat and a few pots of clivia. In her previous life, Xin Yuan rarely contacted her grandmother, not because she didn't want to, but because Zhou Huilan didn't like it. Zhou Huilan had a strained relationship with her own mother, which led her to discourage Xin Yuan from getting too close. Xin Yuan was young at the time and didn't dare to go against her mother's wishes, so she gradually grew distant from her grandmother. When her grandmother passed away, she didn't even get to see her one last time. After 3 rings, an old but spirited voice came through. "Hello. Who is this?" Xin Yuan's hand gripping the receiver was trembling. She opened her mouth several times before finally managing to squeeze out a voice. "Grandma, it's me, Yuan Yuan, Yuan Yuan." Grandma's voice was filled with pleasant surprise. "Oh, my sweet girl, what made you think to call your grandma? Your mother said you were busy with your studies." Xin Yuan's nose stung, and the tears finally fell. She wiped them away roughly with the back of her hand, trying hard to keep her voice steady. "Grandma, I miss you. Can I come see you this weekend?" There was a 2-second silence on the other end of the line, then Grandma laughed, her voice tinged with cautious delight. "Of course, dear, of course you can come. I'll make your favorite sweet and sour pork ribs. I've even saved some of the osmanthus cakes your aunt brought back from the old hometown for you." "Okay," Xin Yuan nodded, her tears falling even harder now. "I'll be there first thing on the weekend, Grandma." "Wonderful, wonderful, I'll be waiting for you." After hanging up the phone, Xin Yuan sat on the edge of the bed, weeping until she was breathless. Her tears were not for her own grievances, but for a regret that was 2 lifetimes too late. In her past life, she had missed far too much. Every phone call from her grandmother, every weekend she could have visited her, and her grandmother's final words, "Yuan Yuan, I miss you." She had thought there would always be more time, that it would be fine to visit her grandmother once she was less busy. Once she had a free moment, once she had become good enough, but there won't be a next time, this lifetime. She won't let anyone or anything come between her and those she cares about. When Zhou Huilan pushed the door in, Xin Yuan had already wiped away her tears and was practicing a blank expression in the mirror. She needed to learn not to easily reveal her emotions. In her previous life, her joys and sorrows were written all over her face, too easy to read and too easy to manipulate. "Yuan Yuan." Zhou Huilan stood at the doorway, her tone carrying a hint of scrutiny. "Your sister Sunyan just arrived. Keep her company, show her around the house. She's 2 years older than you, so you must show her respect. Understand?" Xin Yuan looked at her reflection in the mirror. Her 13-year-old face still held a trace of baby fat, but the light in her eyes was entirely different now. In her past life, Xin Yuan's eyes had always held a cautious, hopeful longing, as if perpetually waiting for someone to love her, but in this life, those same eyes had grown cold and dull, devoid of their former light. "Got it," she responded, her voice as flat as if she were commenting on the nice weather today. Zhou Huilan frowned, sensing that something was off with her daughter today, but couldn't quite put her finger on it. She opened her mouth to say something, but in the end, she just sighed. "You're acting strange today, kid. Oh well. Let's have dinner together tonight. Your dad will come home early, and we'll have a family reunion dinner." "Family," Xin Yuan repeated the word silently in her heart, a faint curve forming at the corner of her mouth, a smile devoid of any warmth. As expected, Xin Jiangwo returned home for dinner. He was in the building materials business, constantly tied up with client dinners outside, making his meals at home a rare occurrence. Xin Yuan from her previous life always hoped he would return, hoping he would glance at her, ask, "How's Yuan Yuan doing with her studies lately?" But every time he came back, his gaze always first fell on Sun Yan. This time was no different. "Nian Nian, sit over here with Dad." Xin Jiangwo rarely showed a gentle smile, pulling out the chair beside him. "I hear you were doing very well in school before you came. If you need anything in the future, just let Dad know." Sun Yan nodded with teary eyes, sitting obediently beside Xin Jiangwo, and softly said, "Thank you, Dad." The word Dad rolled off her tongue so naturally, as if she had said it 1,000 times before. Xin Yuan sat quietly across the table, picked up her chopsticks, and slowly chewed on a piece of green vegetable. Zhou Huilan walked over carrying a bowl of soup. She served Sun Yanqing first, then Xin Jiangwo, and only at the very end did she remember Xin Yuan. She placed the bowl in front of Xin Yuan, her tone casual. "Here, help yourself." In her past life, Xin Yuan would have felt a sharp pang of pain at a moment like this. She would have lowered her head in silent sorrow, asking why 1,000 times in her heart, but in this life, Xin Yuan felt nothing at all. It's not that it doesn't hurt, she has already dug out the part that would hurt in advance, and now it's empty, nothing left. "Mom, this soup is so delicious." Sun Yan took a sip of the soup, her eyes sparkling as she looked at Zhou Huilan. "It tastes just like the kind my mom used to make." Zhou Huilan's eyes welled up, and she reached out to stroke Sun Yan's hair. Mom will make it for you every day from now on. Shen Jiangwo's face softened with concern. He picked up a spare rib and placed it in Sun Yan's bowl. Eat more, he said gently. You're looking too thin. The scene of the happy family of three was like a perfectly framed portrait, while Shen Yuan was the unwanted scrap trimmed from the edges, not even worthy of a mention. After finishing the rice in her bowl, she stood up, announced I'm finished, and carried her dishes to the kitchen. No one paid any attention to whether she had eaten her fill or not. Shen Jiangwo was telling Sun Yan stories about his youth with Sun Yan's father, while Zhou Huilan chimed in, both of them trying their best to make Sun Yan feel the warmth of home. They did a great job, really putting their hearts into it, but this effort was never directed towards Shen Yuan. Shen Yuan placed the bowl in the sink, turned on the faucet, and watched the water wash away the grease on the bowl's surface. Her expression was calm, almost cold, as if she was looking at something unrelated to herself. She remembered a time in her past life when she had a fever. She was alone, too weak to get out of bed, and went hungry the entire day. Sun Yan discovered her after coming home from school. She brought a bowl of porridge to her room and said, Yuan, you should eat something. She was so moved she nearly cried, thinking how wonderful her sister was. She only found out later that it was Zhou Huilan who had told Su Nian to bring the porridge. Zhou Huilan herself was downstairs the whole time, having tea and chatting with Sun Yan's classmates' parents, not even sparing a moment to come upstairs and check on her. She ate the porridge slowly, savoring each spoonful with a silent thought. Mom still cares about me. Looking back now, it seems utterly ridiculous. That evening, Shen Yuan locked her door from the inside. In her past life, she never locked her door, always waiting, hoping that one day her parents would push it open and come in to see her, but that door had never been opened without someone knocking first. She wouldn't have to wait a lifetime this time, so she locked the door. Sitting on the bed, she opened the notebook and wrote another line beneath the previous one. Plan 1, middle school phase, get into the best high school and secure a scholarship. High school phase, strive for a direct admission offer or a full scholarship. University phase, achieve financial independence and leave this home for good. She paused, then added, life goal, to owe no one anything. After writing it down, she closed the notebook, turned off the light, and lay in the darkness. Faint sounds drifted in from the next room. Zhou Huilan was helping Sun Yan tidy up, chatting as she worked, with Sun Yan's soft laughter occasionally punctuating the air. The laughter pierced through the wall like a shower of fine needles, but Shen Yuan could no longer feel it. She had built a wall around that vulnerable place, a wall so high, so thick, and utterly impenetrable. She closed her eyes and told herself in her heart, Shen Yuan, don't you ever look back in this lifetime. Those who don't love you aren't worth a single tear. Yet she still had a dream. In the dream, she was still Shen Yuan at 32, lying in a hospital bed. The ceiling was white, the walls were white, the sheets were white, the whole world was white. She heard footsteps passing in the hallway, one after another, but no one stopped. She opened her mouth to call out a name, but found she couldn't utter anyone's name at all, because there was no one she could call out to. She cried out in her dream and was jolted awake by the sound of her own sobbing. When she opened her eyes, she found a small patch of the pillow damp with tears outside the window. The sky was still dark. It was just past 4 in the morning, and the entire house was as silent as a tomb. Shen Yuan sat up, wiped the corners of her eyes, and began to get dressed, her face expressionless. She remembered that on this day in her past life, the morning after Sun Yan arrived, Zhou Huilan would prepare a lavish breakfast spread and then send Shen Yuan to wake Sun Yan up. Shen Yuan went, but Sun Yan didn't wake up. Shen Yuan called her again, and Sun Yan still didn't stir. Later, when Zhou Huilan entered the room and saw Sun Yan still sleeping, she flew into a rage at Shen Yuan. Why didn't you get her up? She can't be late on her first day of school. In her past life, Shen Yuan was scolded until she cried, believing it was all her fault, but in this life, she won't be the one trying to wake people up anymore. After washing up, Shen Yuan grabbed her backpack and headed out. Passing by the dining room, she saw Zhou Huilan busy in the kitchen. Spotting Shen Yuan with her backpack, Zhou paused, surprised. Where are you off to so early? Off to school? Shen Yuan didn't even turn her head. Not having breakfast? No, I'm not. Zhou Huilan frowned, but before she could say anything, Shen Yuan had already pushed the door open and left. The cold morning wind hit her face. Shen Yuan took a deep breath, feeling as if the stagnant, oppressive air that had been trapped in her chest for who knows how long finally began to dissipate. She walked quickly along the road to school, her hurried pace almost as if she were fleeing from something. The breakfast stalls along the street were already open, with steam rising from the buns and releasing an enticing aroma. Shen Yuan took out the pocket money from her pocket, bought a meat bun and a cup of soy milk, and ate as she walked. The bun was delicious, and the soy milk was sweet. In her previous life, she had never had such a breakfast in the morning because she was always waiting for her mother to call her to eat, waiting for the family to gather at the table, waiting for her father's occasional words of concern. She waited for so many years, but in the end, she got nothing. For the first time in her life, she bought herself a steamed bun to eat. Xinyuan took a bite of the bun, a faint, unconscious smile touching the corners of her mouth. What she didn't know is that after she left, Zhou Huilan came out of the kitchen with a freshly warmed glass of milk. Seeing the empty seat, a complex expression flickered across her face, but it was only for a moment, because the next second, Sunyan came down the stairs, rubbing her sleepy eyes and calling out softly, "Mom." Zhou Huilan smiled immediately, holding the glass of milk as she went to meet her. "Nian Nian, you're awake. Here, drink your milk first. I've fried you an egg, and there's the bacon you love." Sun Yan obediently took the milk, took a sip, and glanced around the dining room. "Where's Yuan Yuan?" Zhou Huilan's tone cooled. "She left first thing this morning, said she wasn't having breakfast. I don't know what's gotten into that child lately. She's been acting so strange." Sun Yan lowered her eyes, her long lashes veiling the emotion in them, and said softly, "Is Yuan Yuan upset because I'm here?" Zhou Huilan felt her heart ache at these words and quickly put her arm around Sun Yan's shoulder. "Don't talk nonsense. It's not your fault. That's just her nature. Don't take it to heart." Sun Yan nodded, said nothing more, and obediently lowered her head to drink her milk. No one saw the fleeting expression in her eyes that only those who had struggled under someone else's roof would understand, because she knew all too well that in this household, her very existence was a form of plunder for another child, but she was all too aware that she had nowhere to go. Zhou Huilan, of course, couldn't see these things. All she saw was Sun Yan being obedient, sensible, and endearing, while Xinyuan was cold, distant, and ungrateful. This contrast tipped the scales in her heart even further, to the point where she didn't even realize what she was doing. When Xinyuan arrived at school, it was still early, and only a few classmates were cleaning the classroom. She placed her backpack on the seat and picked up the broom to sweep the designated area on her own initiative. In her previous life, she wouldn't have done this. She was too quiet, and no one paid attention to her. But in this life, she decided to live differently, not to become more likable, but to become stronger, strong enough to not need anyone's approval. "Xinyuan," a voice came from behind. Xinyuan turned around and saw her homeroom teacher, Mr. Lin, approaching with a stack of exercise books. Seeing her sweeping the floor alone, he nodded with approval. "Here so early, good, very responsible." In her previous life, Xinyuan would have been flattered by these words, blushing and waving her hands, saying, "No, no." But this lifetime Xinyuan merely nodded and continued sweeping. It wasn't that she didn't respect the teacher. It was that she finally understood that others' approval wasn't that important, especially from people you don't need to please. Teacher Lin glanced at her a couple more times, feeling that this usually quiet and almost invisible student was somehow different today. It was hard to put into words, but her eyes were different. There used to be a cautious, almost apologetic look in Xinyuan's eyes when she regarded others, as if she were afraid of being a burden, but that look was gone now, replaced by a calm and steadiness that seemed beyond her years. The last class of the afternoon was PE. During the free activity period, most of the girls gathered in groups to chat. Xinyuan sat alone on the steps by the sports field, an English vocabulary book open on her knees, silently memorizing the words. The autumn wind was chilly, making her uniform sleeves flap noisily, but she seemed completely unaware of it. "Xinyuan," a boy walked over, holding a basketball, beads of sweat on his forehead. It was the class monitor. "Qingyu, what's wrong with you today? You've seemed off all day." Xinyuan glanced at him. Qingyu, the object of her past life's unrequited love, the class monitor who was sunny, outgoing, top of the class, and liked by everyone. In her past life, Xinyuan had a secret crush on him for 3 years, too shy to even speak more than a few words. In the end, she could only watch as he got into a university in another city, and they never crossed paths again. "It's nothing." Xinyuan lowered her head and went back to memorizing vocabulary. Qingyu was momentarily stumped by this lukewarm response, scratching his head as if he wanted to say something but didn't know how to start. He stood there for 2 seconds before finally walking away with the basketball. Xinyuan didn't look up at him. In her previous life, she would have been thrilled all day long if Qingyu had spoken to her first, meticulously writing his name in her diary, and fantasizing about those impossible pink scenarios late at night, but she was already 32 in this life. How could a 32-year-old soul have any thoughts about a 15-year-old boy? She flipped a page in her vocabulary book and continued memorizing words, expressionless. After school, Xinyuan didn't wait for the driver to pick her up as she usually did. The Shin family had a dedicated driver, but in her previous life, Xinyuan always had to wait a long time because the driver would first drop Sunyan off at her tutoring class and then take a long detour to pick her up. Sometimes she waited so long that even the security guard uncle couldn't bear to watch and offered her his stool to sit on. She wouldn't wait anymore. In This lifetime, Shin Yuan walked to the bus stop, checked the route, and boarded the bus home. The bus was crowded, and she stood in the middle of the carriage with her backpack, being jostled left and right by the crowd, but she didn't feel the least bit tired. This experience of squeezing onto a bus made her feel grounded, as it proved she could get anywhere on her own without waiting for anyone. When she arrived home, Xun Jiangwo and Zhou Huilan were sitting in the living room chatting with Su Nian. The three of them sat on the sofa, with fruits and snacks on the coffee table, creating a warm atmosphere like a painting. Xin Yuan changed her shoes, carrying her backpack as she passed through the living room without pausing. Yuan, Xin Jiangwo called out to her. Xin Yu stopped in her tracks and turned to look at him. On Xin Jiangwo's face was an expression she had never seen before, not concern, not affection, but a subtle, somewhat scrutinizing appraisal. Xin Yuan from her previous life wouldn't have understood this expression, but Xin Yuan from this life knows all too well. It's the look a father gives to a troublesome daughter. Be nice to your Sunyan sister, she just arrived. Xin Jiangwo's tone wasn't harsh, but it was firm and unyielding. She's older than you need to respect her, understand. Xin Yuan looked into his eyes that bore a few similarities to her own, but they lacked the warmth she had imagined. A sudden memory surfaced. In her past life, the last call she made before dying was to Xin Jiangwo. The phone rang 7 times before it was answered. Before she could speak, a cacophony of background noise and Xin Jiangwo's impatient voice came through. Make it quick. I'm in a meeting, she said at the time. Dad, I'm sick. Xin Jiangwo was silent for 2 seconds, then said, How old are you? Can't you go see a doctor yourself? I don't have time right now. The call ended. That was the last time she would ever hear her father's voice. Xin Yuan withdrew her gaze, nodded, and said with terrifying calmness, Understood. She didn't say I will, because she had no intention of being nice to Sun Yan, nor did she plan to respect someone she felt no need to respect, but she didn't argue back, because there was no point. In this house, nothing she said was ever taken seriously. Every emotion she showed was dismissed as being immature or having a bad temper. It was better to stay silent than to waste her breath. Xin Yuan went back to her room, closed the door, placed her school bag on the desk, and opened that notebook. Day 1, skipped Zhou Huilan's homemade breakfast and bought steamed buns instead, didn't wait for the driver and took the bus home, didn't blush in front of Qingyu, didn't show weakness before Xin Jiangwo. After writing this, she added one more line, still a long way to go. She needed money. It took her years in her past life to learn that in this world, money is the only thing that will never betray you. In this life, she needed to start saving earlier, achieve financial independence sooner, and vanish from this household for good. But what could a 13-year-old middle schooler possibly do? In her past life, she didn't start working part-time until university, but this time around, she couldn't wait that long. She had to figure something out. Xin Yuan rested her head on the desk, thinking for a moment, when she remembered something. In her past life, during high school, she had entered an essay contest, won first prize, and received a 5,000 yuan award. She remembered the contest theme, the date it was held, and even the writing style favored by the head of the judging panel. In her previous life, she had read and reread that winning essay countless times. It was one of the few shining moments in her life she could participate ahead of schedule. There were also math competitions, English speech contests, and all sorts of events she hadn't had time for in her past life, or had entered but never won. She knew the questions, the focus areas, and even the judges' preferences. This wasn't cheating. It was a backdoor opened for her by fate itself. Only a fool would refuse to walk through it. A genuine, heartfelt smile finally touched Xin Yuan's lips. She flipped her notebook to the last page and began making a list. The page was soon filled with dense, heavy script. Each character was written with such deliberate force. It was as if she were carving the words not just into the paper, but into her very bones. That night, for the first time in what felt like forever, Xin Yuan did not suffer from insomnia. Lying in bed, she listened to the faint murmur of conversation from next door, feeling an unexpected sense of calm. She no longer expected the door to open, no longer expected anyone to come and say goodnight, no longer expected anyone to be waiting for her at the breakfast table the next morning. Expecting nothing meant she had nothing left to lose. The next morning, Xin Yuan still woke up early. As she passed by the dining room on her way out, she saw Sun Yan already seated at the table. Zhou Huilan was just placing a steaming bowl of congee in front of her. Sun Yan spotted her and offered a friendly smile. Yuan, join us for breakfast. Xin Yuan looked at her, at those innocent, sincere eyes, and suddenly felt that she couldn't blame Sun Yan entirely for the tragedy of her past life. Sun Yan hadn't done anything wrong. She was simply too adept at making people like her, and Xin Yuan just happened not to understand. No, Xin Yuan said indifferently, I'm leaving first. As she pushed the door open and walked out, she heard Zhou Huilan's voice behind her. Look at her attitude, as if someone owed her something. Xin Yuan didn't catch what Sun Yan said, nor did she care to. She walked along the morning street. The owner of the steamed bun shop, who recognized her by now, greeted her with a smile. Same as usual, young lady, pork buns. And soy milk, yes. Thank you, uncle. Xinyuan took the buns and soy milk, eating as she walked. The steam from the baozi clouded her vision. She blinked, and suddenly noticed a tiny droplet clinging to her eyelash. Not a tear, just steam. It's just the steam, she told herself, but only she knew that the last tear shed by Xinyuan, who died at the age of 32, in that white hospital room, had not yet dried up, but she wouldn't cry anymore. In this lifetime, Xinyuan vowed, she would not shed a single tear for anyone unworthy. Xinyuan's plan was proceeding even more smoothly than she had anticipated. From ages 13 to 15, she was on an absolute tear, competing in every single contest she could get her hands on. First prize in the essay competition, second prize in the math contest, first place in the English speech competition, a provincial third prize in the physics competition, and a city-level first prize in the chemistry olympiad. Certificates and awards flooded in like a blizzard, and her name on the school's honor roll seemed to need updating almost every month. The teachers were absolutely stunned. Xinyuan's grades used to be decent, but she was only ever in the top 10 of her class, nothing exceptional. But in the last 2 years, it's like a switch flipped. Her exam results have been getting more and more impressive each time. In the final exam of her second semester in 8th grade, she clinched first place in the entire grade, leaving the runner-up a full 30 points behind. Xinyuan has made remarkable progress recently. Everyone should learn from her example. When their homeroom teacher, Mr. Lin, praised her during the class meeting, all the students turned to look at Xinyuan, who was sitting by the window in the very last row. Xinyuan kept her head down, focused on her practice problems, not even looking up. She had grown accustomed to those kinds of stares in her past life. Such attention would have made her blush, her heart race. She would have felt embarrassed, wondering to herself, do they all think I'm just putting on an act? But in this life, she couldn't care less what anyone else thought. She didn't solve problems for praise. She did it because every award she earned was another layer of security for her future. Qingyu, sitting diagonally in front of her, glanced back over his shoulder. There was a subtle, unconscious attentiveness in the young man's gaze. He had noticed the change in Xinyuan over the past 2 years. She was no longer the quiet, almost invisible girl she used to be, but she hadn't become lively either. Instead, she had settled into a kind of, how to put it, a state of detachment. She was right there, you could see her, but it always felt like there was something in between, an invisible barrier you just couldn't cross sometimes. Qingyu wondered what exactly was hidden behind Xinyuan's eyes. Those eyes were beautiful, clear, and bright, but they were too calm, unnervingly calm for a 15-year-old girl. After school, Qingyu stopped her at the stairwell. Xinyuan, wait. Xinyuan stopped, looking at him. She's now much taller than 2 years ago, but she still has to look up to meet Qingyu's eyes. The 15-year-old boy is already 178 meters tall, and he looks even taller standing on the stairs. What is it? Qingyu opened his mouth, not really having anything specific to say. He just wanted to talk to her. For the past 2 years, Xinyuan has barely socialized with anyone, living a solitary life. He felt inexplicably that this was not good, but couldn't pinpoint why. There's a math interest group activity this weekend. Do you want to join? Qingyu made up an excuse. The teacher asked me to organize it. You're so good at math. Want to come? Xinyuan thought about it. The math interest group is indeed useful, as it provides access to some competition resources, which could help her win awards. She nodded. All right, send me the time and place. And then she left. Qingyu stood there, watching her figure disappear around the corner of the stairs, a vague, indescribable sense of loss welling up inside him. He always felt that when Xinyuan looked at him, there was nothing in her eyes. It's not dislike, nor indifference, but simply not caring. It was as if Qingyu was no different from a wall or a tree in her eyes. He even envied the wall and the tree, because at least they wouldn't be looked at by Xinyuan with that "who are you" expression. When Xinyuan returned home, the living room was once again filled with a warm and harmonious atmosphere. Sun Yan sat on the sofa while Zhou Huilan combed her hair. Xin Jiangwo sat across from them reading the newspaper, occasionally looking up with a smile at the corner of his mouth. Over the past 2 years, Sun Yan had completely integrated into this family. She was sweet-natured, obedient, and knew just the right words to say. She understood when to act coy, when to be quiet, when to say you've worked hard, Mom, and when to pour tea for her father. She was like a finely tuned instrument, every note perfectly striking a chord in the hearts of the Shin parents. And what about Xinyuan? Xinyuan is like a misaligned piano key. Pressing it doesn't produce a pleasant sound, so it's better not to press it at all. Yuan's back. Zhou Huilan saw her and, unusually, took the initiative to greet her. How did you do in your midterm exams this time? Xinyuan's hand paused as she was changing her shoes. This was the first time in 2 years that Zhou Huilan had asked about her exam results. She knew the reason all too well. Sun Yan had bombed her midterms, plummeting from the top 50 to 120th in her grade. Zhou Huilan wasn't asking out of concern for her, but to confirm that her grades hadn't surpassed Sun Yan's by too wide a margin, just to make herself feel better. Not bad, Xin Yuan said. What does not bad mean in terms of ranking? First place, the atmosphere in the living room subtly froze for a moment. Zhou Huilan paused for half a second while combing her hair, then continued as if nothing had happened. Xin Jiangwo raised his newspaper a bit higher, shielding his face. Sun Yan lowered her head, pursed her lips, and said nothing. Xin Yuan watched the scene, a slight curve forming at the corner of her mouth. She understood the rules of this household all too well. Your excellence was not a source of pride, but a threat to others. The better you were, the more uneasy they became. Deep down, they knew they had treated you unfairly. That's why they feared your strength, dreaded the day you would no longer need them, and were terrified you might turn around and demand to know why they had done this to you, so they would rather you remain mediocre. It's better if you stay quietly in that north-facing room, making no loud noises and not drawing any attention. But Xin Yuan wouldn't have it. She wanted to become stronger, so strong that they could no longer ignore her, so strong that every time they did, it would seem utterly ridiculous, so strong that the day she left, the entire house would tremble at her departure, and then she would never look back. In the evening, Xin Yuan was doing her homework in her room as usual. At 10:30, someone knocked on her door. She opened the door and saw Sun Yan standing there, holding a cup of hot milk. Yuan. Sun Yan's voice was soft, carrying a gentle, cautious tone. You're not asleep yet, are you? I warmed you a cup of milk. Xin Yuan looked at her without saying a word. 2 years of foster care had refined Sun Yan. She wore a silk pajama set, her hair cascading softly over her shoulders. Her fair, delicate skin gave off a gentle, nurtured glow. She was a world apart from the timid, frail girl of 2 years ago. Xin Yuan suddenly remembered something from her previous life. Back then, she was 25, Sun Yan was 27. And both of them were already working. During a family gathering, Sun Yan said in front of everyone, I'm so grateful to my parents. Without them, I don't know what kind of person I would have become. The greatest fortune of my life is being a daughter of the Shin family. Everyone was laughing and moved, and even Zhou Huilan's eyes reddened. Only Xin Yuan sat in the corner, silently eating the rice in her bowl grain by grain. No one thought there was anything wrong with this statement. No one realized that the real daughter of the Shin family was sitting right beside them, listening to another girl thank her parents for giving her the greatest fortune of her life. Xin Yuan took the milk, said thank you, and then closed the door. She didn't drink the milk. Instead, she poured it down the sink. It wasn't that she suspected Sun Yan of tampering with it, but that she no longer wanted to accept anything from anyone in this household. Every sip of milk, every meal, every piece of clothing, every penny, it was all debt. She didn't want to owe anyone anything in this lifetime. Sun Yan stood outside the door, staring at the closed door for a long time. Her expression was complicated. If anyone had seen her expression, they might have said it was the disappointment of being rejected. Sun Yan knew this home was unfair to Xin Yuan. She knew it from the very beginning. She knew that everything she received was meant for someone else, that every extra bite of food, every extra embrace, was something she had taken from Xin Yuan, but she was powerless to change it. She had no parents, no home, nowhere to go. The Shin family was her only lifeline, and she had to cling to it. Desperately, everyone is selfish. Sun Yan was no exception, so she could only pretend not to know, pretend not to see Xin Yuan's increasingly cold gaze, pretend not to notice the always missing set of bowls and chopsticks on the dining table, and pretend not to hear Zhou Huilan's impatient tone when mentioning Xin Yuan. She curled up in the warmth this home offered her, pretending that warmth wasn't stolen from someone else. Yet every night, when she passed that north-facing room on the first floor and saw the light seeping from under the door, her heart would still clench. That light stayed on far too late. No one went to knock on that door. No one said, Yuan, time for bed. Sun Yan didn't either. She was just passing by, then returned to her south-facing, warm room with its soft carpet, closed the door, and kept the light from the lamp outside. That way, she could sleep peacefully. During the second semester of third year of junior high, Xin Yuan made a decision that surprised everyone. She applied to the city's top high school, but it's a fully enclosed boarding school where students only get 2 days off a month. You're going to live on campus. When Zhou Huilan heard the news, her expression wasn't one of reluctance, but of surprise. Only 2 days home a month. Yeah. Xin Yuan handed over the registration form for her to sign. Zhou Huilan picked up the pen, hesitated for a moment, and asked, does your dad know? He doesn't know. Just sign it. Zhou Huilan frowned but still signed. She didn't even ask Xin Yuan why she wanted to live on campus, nor did she inquire about the school's tuition, what the environment was like, or if there would be anyone to look after her. She simply signed the form, pushed it back, and said, don't cause any trouble for your father. Xin Yuan took the enrollment form, put it away, and turned to leave. In her past life, she attended the ordinary high school near their home because Zhou Huilan had said, Nianyan's health isn't good and needs looking after, you should attend a school nearby so it's convenient for you to come home. Back then, she agreed to ride her bike to and from school every day, rain or shine. Sunyan was sent to the same key city school, living in the dormitory and only returning home on weekends. This time around, she wouldn't let anyone alter her path. On the day of the high school entrance exam, Shen Yuan performed exceptionally well. When the results came out, she ranked third in the city. This score was enough for her to get into any high school she wanted, including the prestigious one rumored to have a 30% admission rate to Tsinghua and Peking University every year. When Shen Jiangwo found out about this, he was in the living room on a call with a business partner. Zhou Huilan placed the transcript in front of him. He glanced at it and said to the person on the phone, "My daughter ranked third in the city," with a brief moment of pride in his tone, but that pride only lasted for the remainder of the call. After hanging up, he placed the transcript on the coffee table and said to Shen Yuan, "Not bad, keep it up." Shen Yuan said, "Okay, no hug, no celebration, no dad is proud of you." Shen Yuan from her previous life would have been thrilled for days over this barely noticeable recognition. But this life Shen Yuan no longer cares. She didn't aim for third place in the city to gain Shen Jiangwo's approval, she did it for herself. As for Sun Yan, her high school entrance exam score was 20 points lower than her mock exam, and she didn't get into the boarding high school Shen Yuan applied to. Instead, she went to a second-tier school. Zhou Huilan was heartbroken and cooked Sun Yan's favorite dishes for 3 days straight, trying different ways to comfort her. "Don't be sad, Nian Nian, that school is also very good, and mom knows some teachers there who can take extra care of you." Shen Yuan paused mid-bite when she heard those words. In her previous life, she had performed neither poorly nor exceptionally well in the high school entrance exam, ending up at the ordinary high school near her home. Zhou Huilan never cooked a meal to comfort her, nor did she ever say, "That school is also good." She merely said, "Anyway, you're not picky." Shen Yan swallowed that mouthful of rice and kept on eating. During the summer vacation, Shen Yan did something major. She pulled together the bonuses and New Year's money she had saved over the past 2 years, a total of 12,000 yuan, and invested it all in a stock she knew from her past life was going to rise. In her previous life, she didn't start dabbling in investments until she was 30, paying a hefty price in tuition fees before she finally got the hang of it. But in this life, it was as if she had been granted foresight. She knew exactly which stocks would soar, which would plummet, and which companies were destined to become giants over the next decade. She didn't invest much because the principal was too small. But this 12,000 yuan would turn into nearly 100,000 in 3 years. 100,000 yuan would be enough to cover her college tuition and living expenses, enough to free her from this family. Money breeds money, and the snowball will keep growing. She doesn't need much, just enough to live like a human being. After learning that she would be living in the dormitory, her grandmother specially took a bus from the outskirts and traveled over an hour to see her. Her grandmother was old, much older than what Shen Yuan remembered from her previous life. Her hair was completely white, her back was hunched, but she was still in good spirits and her voice was as loud as ever. She carried a large bag filled with all of Shen Yuan's favorite foods, sweet and sour pork ribs in a thermos, osmanthus cake wrapped in several layers of oil paper, and a jar of her homemade pickles. "Sweetheart, you must take good care of yourself at the dorm. Don't get so caught up in your studies that you forget to eat." Grandma unpacked the items one by one, chattering all the while. "You've always been so thin since you were little. If you're not getting enough to eat at school, just come home. Grandma will cook for you." Shen Yuan stood to the side, watching her grandmother's graying hair and wrinkled hands. A lump formed in her throat, and she almost couldn't hold back her tears. In her past life, her grandmother had been the same, always visiting her with armfuls of packages, but back then, Shen Yuan hadn't dared to accept them because it would upset Zhou Huilan thought the things her grandmother brought were unpresentable and couldn't understand why pickles would appear on the Shen family's dining table. Shen Yuan was too young and too concerned about her mother's opinion, so she always declined, saying, "Grandma, you don't need to bring anything. We have everything at home." Later, her grandmother stopped coming. It wasn't that she didn't want to come. It was that she didn't dare to. She was worried that the things she brought would put her granddaughter in an awkward position. In this lifetime, Shen Yuan would never let her grandmother suffer such indignity again. She took the bag, gave her grandmother a tight hug, and said, "Grandma, your braised pork ribs are the best. I've been craving them for ages." Grandma was taken aback for a moment, then broke into a smile, her eyes crinkling into thin lines. "I'm glad you like them. If you love them, I'll make more next time." Shen Yuan ate every last bit of the spare ribs, even using a steamed bun to sop up all the sauce. Grandma sat beside her, watching her eat, the wrinkles on her face smoothed out, like a chrysanthemum warmed by the sun. After the meal, Grandma held Shen Yuan's hand and fell into a sudden, quiet moment. Then she said something that nearly broke Shen Yuan's heart. Nan, you've changed a lot in the past 2 years." Shen Yuan felt a tightness in her chest. "What's changed?" I can't quite put my finger on it, Grandma thought for a moment, but it feels like you're not as afraid as you used to be. When you were little, you always seemed so cautious, as if you were afraid of causing trouble for others. Now it's different. You walk with a breeze now. Shen Yuan fell silent for a few seconds, then smiled. It was a genuine, heartfelt smile, not the kind practiced in front of a mirror. Grandma, I'm not afraid anymore, she said. I'm not afraid of anything, because she had nothing left. No expectations of family, no longing to be loved, no vulnerabilities that made her tremble and walk on thin ice. Once a person stops caring about anything, they have nothing to fear. When her grandmother left, Shen Yuan saw her off to the bus stop. As the bus arrived, her grandmother turned back to look at her before boarding, her cloudy old eyes reflecting a complex emotion. Granddaughter, her grandmother said, things that are too hard are easily broken. Shen Yuan stood on the platform, watching the bus grow smaller and smaller, its tail lights gradually turning into two small red dots in the night. Something too hard is easy to break, she knew. She had already shattered once in her past life. When something hard shatters, at least it leaves behind sharp fragments that can cut those who try to get close to her again. But when something soft shatters, there's nothing left, not even a trace of its original form. Shen Yuan took her grandmother's words to heart. But she did not change her course. Life in the first year of high school was far more demanding than middle school, yet Shen Yuan actually found it easier. Living on campus freed her completely from the oppressive atmosphere of that house. No more having to read Zhou Huilan's moods every day, no more playing the invisible person at the dinner table, no more lying awake until dawn listening to the sounds of laughter from the next room. The dorm room was shared by 6. The other 5 girls were all living away from home for the first time. Some were homesick, some were crying, and others were making a fuss. Only Shen Yuan was quiet. She neatly made her bed, hung up the mosquito net, tidily put her things away in the cupboard, and then sat on her bed to read. Shen Yuan, don't you miss home? From the lower bunk, Lin Xiaoxiao asked her, eyes rimmed red. Shen Yuan turned a page of her book. I don't want to. Why not? Is your family not good to you? The words tumbled out of Lin Xiaoxiao's mouth, and she instantly regretted them. Sorry, that's not what I meant. It's fine. Shen Yuan's tone was flat. You're right, it's not good. The dorm room fell silent for a moment. The other girls stole glances at Shen Yuan, but she had already lowered her head to continue reading, as if they were discussing something that had nothing to do with her. Lin Xiaoxiao opened her mouth, wanting to say something but not knowing what, and finally whispered, you can talk to me about anything in the future. Shen Yuan hemmed softly but didn't look up. No one knew what Shen Yuan's not good meant, nor could anyone imagine the emotional journey a 15-year-old girl had already been through when she said, you're right, it's not good. During the second semester of her freshman year, Shen Yuan received a text message from Sun Yan. Yuan, are you coming home this weekend? Mom made your favorite dishes. Shen Yuan looked at the text message and curved her lips slightly. What does she like to eat? Zhou Huilan never knew what she liked to eat. In her previous life, she loved eating fish, but Zhou Huilan said it was troublesome to prepare, so they made it less often. She loved spicy food, but Zhou Huilan said Sun Yan's stomach couldn't handle it, so the dishes at home were always mild. Eventually, she got used to the mild flavors, to compromising, to shrinking all her preferences to the smallest possible size, so small that they wouldn't inconvenience anyone. She replied with 2 words, not returning. Sun Yan quickly sent another message, what about next week? Next week is your birthday, and Dad said he wants to celebrate it with you. Shen Yuan stared at this text message for a long time. In her previous life, not a single birthday was remembered. Every birthday, she would buy herself a small cake, sit alone in her room, eat it, and say happy birthday to herself in her heart. She thought her life would always be like this, and she had even grown accustomed to celebrating her own birthday. But Sun Yan said, Dad wants to celebrate your birthday. Shen Yuan suddenly found it ridiculous. She couldn't tell if Shen Jiangwo genuinely wanted to celebrate her birthday or if Sun Yan had made up the excuse to win her favor. But no matter the situation, it doesn't change the fact, she doesn't need it anymore. She doesn't need them to remember, doesn't need their compensation, doesn't need this late, cheap, and relayed concern from Sun Yan. She typed a few words, deleted them, and finally replied with just one word, busy. On the other end of the phone, Sun Yan stared at the word busy and bit her lip. She has tried very hard over the past 2 years. She has countless times tried to get close to Shen Yuan, warmed her milk, helped her tidy up her room, and spoke well of her in front of her parents. But Shen Yuan is like a wall. No matter what she does, that wall remains unmoved. It's not hatred, not dislike, but a complete, resolute, and without leaving any room. They also classified her as unnecessary. Sometimes Sun Yan wondered if Shen Yuan hated her, but she quickly dismissed the thought. Hatred is an emotion. And Xin Yuan felt nothing for her. That was the most terrifying part. Being hated at least means the other person still cares about you. To be utterly ignored means you're not even worthy of their concern. On the weekend, Xin Yuan didn't go home but instead went to the city library. She spent the entire day there, finished 2 sets of competition problems, read half of Principles of Economics, and then rode her bike back to school before closing time. As she passed the school gate, she saw someone standing under a streetlight. Qingyu, the boy, wore his school uniform jacket, holding a bag in his hand. His eyes lit up when he saw her, but he quickly restrained himself. Xin Yuan, he called out to her. Xin Yuan stopped her bike, 1 foot on the ground. Why are you here? I was just passing by. Qingyu offered an excuse he himself didn't believe, then held out the bag. Happy birthday. Xin Yuan looked at the bag but didn't take it. It suddenly dawned on her. Today was her birthday. She had almost forgotten it herself. As in her past life, she had grown accustomed to not celebrating her birthday, but Qingyu remembered the person she had a crush on in her past life, and whom she had paid almost no attention to in this one, remembered her birthday. How did you know? She asked. It's on the academic record. Qingyu scratched his head. I saw it last year and remembered it. The streetlight stretched his shadow very long, and the outline of the young boy appeared soft and youthful under the warm yellow light. Xin Yuan looked at him and suddenly felt that fate was truly absurd. In her past life, she yearned so desperately for someone to remember her birthday, yet not a single soul did. In this life, she no longer cares, yet someone remembers. Thank you. Xin Yuan took the bag but didn't open it. You should head back. It's getting dark, aren't you going to open it? Qingyu watched with anticipation. Xin Yuan lowered her head and opened the bag. Inside was a book, Camus' The Stranger. She was taken aback for a moment, as this was her favorite novel in her past life. She could even recite that opening line, Mother died today, or maybe yesterday. I don't know. She looked up at Qingyu, studying him seriously for a few seconds for the first time. How did you know I liked this book? Qingyu's ears turned red. I remembered because you quoted from it during your presentation in Chinese class last time. Xin Yuan fell silent for a moment, then placed the book back into the bag and said, Thank you. I really like it. This time, her tone was a little softer than before, not a deliberate coldness, but a genuine, subtle thaw. Qingyu smiled, revealing 2 small canine teeth. His boyish grin was as refreshing as an ice-cold soda on a summer day. I'm glad you like it. I'll head off then. Get back to your dorm soon. He turned and ran a few steps, then looked back and called out, Xin Yuan, happy birthday. The sound echoed briefly at the empty school gate before being scattered by the night wind. Xin Yuan stood there, watching his figure vanish into the night. Holding the book, she felt something gently brush against a place in her heart that had long since formed a thick scar. Just a touch, she pushed that feeling down, got on her bike, and rode back to the dormitory. Back in the dorm, she placed the book by her pillow, finished washing up, and got into bed. Lin Xiaoxiao peeked out and asked, Xin Yuan, is today your birthday? With her eyes closed, Xin Yuan gave a soft happy birthday. Lin Xiaoxiao led the cheer, and the other girls followed, chirping their well wishes. Xin Yuan didn't respond, but the corner of her mouth curved slightly. The curve was so small that it was invisible in the dark, but it was real. For 3 years in high school, Xin Yuan operated at a breakneck pace, like a clockwork mechanism. She consistently ranked in the top 3 of her grade, won 2 first prizes at the provincial level and 1 second prize at the national level, and also received a national scholarship during her sophomore year. This money was enough to cover her entire senior year expenses. She was contacting her family less and less. She went home for 2 days a month, sometimes not even then, citing school extra classes as the reason. Zhou Huilan didn't ask much, as Sun Yan was busy too. Sun Yan was preparing for the college entrance exam, so all the family's attention was focused on her. Xin Jiangwo would occasionally send a message in the family group, asking, How's Yuan lately? Xin Yuan would reply with a simple fine, and the conversation would end there. Zhou Huilan would post photos of Sun Yan in the group, Sun Yan studying, Sun Yan participating in club activities, Sun Yan wearing new clothes. There were no photos of Xin Yuan. It wasn't that they weren't taken, it's just that no one thought to post them. Xin Yuan looked at the photos, her finger paused on the screen for a moment, then swiped past them. She no longer felt pain. During her senior year of high school, Sun Yan was admitted to a first-year university in her home province. Not top-notch, but quite good. Zhou Huilan was so excited that she posted a 9-grid photo on WeChat Moments with the caption, My amazing daughter, you make me so proud. Xin Jiangwo also shared it on his social media, saying, My daughter makes me proud. When Xin Yuan saw that post, she didn't react at all. She wouldn't tell anyone that she had already received a pre-admission offer from the nation's top university back in her second year of high school. No need for the college entrance exam, no need to worry about the cutoff score. She had already secured her ticket in advance. She didn't tell her family, because no one would have cared anyway, or perhaps, she was waiting for the right moment. 1 month after the college entrance exams, Xin Yuan went home to collect her things. As she pushed open the front door, the living room was empty, but the Sound of Zhou Huilan and Sun Yan's cheerful conversation drifted in from the dining room. While changing her shoes, she heard Zhou Huilan say, "Nian Nian, do you want to live on campus or commute for university? If you commute, I can rent an apartment for you near the school so I can look after you." Sun Yan replied with a laugh, "Mom, I'm all grown up now. You don't need to take care of me." "Nonsense. Your health isn't the best. And you won't eat properly on your own. I wouldn't be able to." "Stop worrying." Shen Yuan stood at the entrance, listening to the conversation, when suddenly she remembered what Zhou Huilan had said to her in her previous life. "You're already this old, and you still can't take care of yourself." It was the first thing Zhou Huilan said when she returned home for winter break during her freshman year of college, running a fever of 39 degrees. She changed into her slippers and walked into the dining room. When Zhou Huilan saw her, her expression didn't change much. She simply asked back, "Have you eaten?" "I've eaten." Shen Yuan told a lie because she didn't want to sit down and eat with them. She went upstairs to look for something and passed Sun Yan's room. Where the door was open, Sun Yan had decorated her room to be very cozy, with pink bedsheets, lace-trimmed curtains, a row of skincare and makeup products on the desk, and a photo of her and Zhou Huilan pasted on the wall. Shen Yuan's room remains the same as ever, facing north, cold and damp, with a corner of the wallpaper peeling off, and nothing on the desk. She hasn't lived here for a long time, but the air in the room still carries a damp, musty smell, as if the room itself is slowly rotting. She found a document in the drawer, a pre-admission notice from the school. She read it once, folded it neatly, put it in her school bag, and then went downstairs. As she reached the corner of the stairs, she heard Zhou Huilan's voice coming from the living room, talking on the phone. "Let's set Nianian's graduation banquet for the end of the month. Yes, we'll host it at home, inviting a few tables of relatives and friends. Her dad wants to make it a big deal. After all, she's the first college student in our family." Whatever was said on the other end made Zhou Huilan laugh. "Exactly. Nianian is such a hardworking child. She's never given us any trouble since she was little, unlike our other one, who spends all day not knowing what they're thinking, and while their grades are okay, that personality of theirs, oh well, let's not talk about it." Shen Yuan stood on the stairs, gripping her backpack strap so tightly that her knuckles turned white. "The grades are decent, though, third in the city, a national competition first prize, and a pre-admission to a top university, all described by her mother as decent." She took a deep breath, forcing down the bitter ache rising in her chest. Then she walked downstairs, past the living room, and said to Zhou Huilan, "Mom, I'm leaving." Zhou Huilan was on the phone, not even looking up, and waved her hand dismissively. Shen Yuan stepped out the door, stood on the porch, and watched the heavy security door of the Shen family close behind her. The lock clicked. Like a verdict, she stood in the June sunshine and suddenly found it amusing. The lesson she had learned in her previous life over 32 years, she mastered in just 3 years in this one. Some things aren't about not deserving them, but about never being able to get them from the wrong person. Just as you can't beg a drop of water from a sky that never rains, you can't squeeze oil from a cold stone. Shen Yuan walked to the bus stop on the corner. As she waited, her phone buzzed. It was a message from her grandmother. "Sweetheart, it's your birthday next week. I've made your favorite osmanthus cakes. When are you coming home to get them?" Reading the message, Shen Yuan's eyes welled up with tears instantly. The whole world might forget her birthday, but her grandmother never would. The whole world might think she's just okay, but to her grandmother, she's the best girl in the entire world. She typed quickly, "Grandma, I'll be home this weekend. Save the osmanthus cakes for me. I'm going to eat a ton of them." After sending it, she added another line, "Grandma, I got into the best university. Your little girl is pretty amazing." This time, she didn't hold back her tears. Not sad tears, but a complex mix of grievance and relief. She stood on the bus platform, her back to the direction of the Shen family, crying like a 13-year-old child, but she knew this was the last time she would cry for this family. That summer after the college entrance exam, Shen Yuan laid everything out on the table. She didn't take the college entrance exam, so she worked the entire month of June. She took on 3 part-time jobs, working as an assistant at a training institution in the morning, organizing books at the library in the afternoon, and doing translation work online in the evening. She packed her schedule tightly, from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m., with almost no free time. Shen Jiangwo called to ask how she did on the college entrance exam, and she replied, "I didn't take it." There was a 5-second silence on the other end of the phone. "What did you say?" "I said I didn't take the college entrance exam." Shen Yuan's tone was calm. "I was pre-admitted in my sophomore year, so I didn't need to take it." Another 5 seconds of silence passed. Shen Jiangwo's voice changed then, carrying a complex emotion Shen Yuan had never heard from him before. "When did you get the early admission offer? Why didn't you tell the family? Would you have cared if I did?" Shen Yuan shot back. Her tone wasn't sharp, it was even gentle, but that gentleness was more disarming than any sharpness could be, because it meant the speaker had stopped caring about the answer altogether. Shen Jiangwo remained silent. Shen Yuan didn't wait for him to speak and continued, "Dad, I'll be 18 next month. From now on, I won't ask the family for a single cent, and you don't need to worry about me anymore. What do you mean? Shin Jangwo finally found his voice and said, are you upset because of Nyanian? I've told you so many times, Nyanian has no parents. It's only right that we treat her well. You're our biological child. How could we not love you? Shin Yuan heard this and laughed. The laughter was short and light, like a breath squeezed out from the throat. But when Shin Jangwo, on the other end of the phone, heard that laugh, for some reason, a chill suddenly ran down his spine. Dad, Shin Yuan said, you say you love me, but do you know when my birthday is? Shin Jangwo's mouth fell open, but no words came out. Do you know what score I got on the high school entrance exam? Silence. Do you know which building and room number my high school dormitory was? A long silence. Shin Yuan waited 3 seconds, then said, it's fine, you don't need to know. And you never will. She hung up the phone. It was something she hadn't had the chance to do in her past life. In her previous life, she waited endlessly for her parents to wake up to the truth, for them to come and ask, are you okay? And for them to one day suddenly realize they had a daughter. She waited until her death, but it never came in this life. She won't wait anymore. She tore through that thin veil for them. You don't love me, I know, and I don't need your love anymore. We go our separate ways, with no debts between us after. Hanging up the phone, Shin Yuan expected her hand to tremble, but it didn't. Her hand was steady as a surgeon's holding a scalpel. She sent a message to Sun Yan. Sis, I'm leaving mom and dad in your care from now on. You're a better daughter to them than I ever was. Sun Yan replied instantly. Yuan, what do you mean? Where are you going? Shin Yuan didn't reply. She then called her grandmother. When the call connected, a warmth finally returned to her voice. Grandma, I'll come see you next month. I bought you a massage chair. Your back troubles you, so make sure to use it often. Grandma laughed on the other end of the line. Why spend that money? Keep it for yourself. Grandma, Shin Yuan said, I have money now. I can take care of you. This was the first time since her rebirth that she used the word take care. It wasn't about being taken care of. It was about taking care of someone else. She was no longer the Shin Yuan who needed to be pitied, given alms, and kicked around like a ball. She had strength, choices, and the ability to protect those she cared about. On her 18th birthday, Shin Yuan ate a bowl of longevity noodles alone at a small restaurant near her school. The noodles were hand-rolled, the broth was made from bone stock, and there was a sunny side-up egg on top with crispy edges around the yolk. Her favorite kind. She ate slowly, bite by bite, as if performing some kind of ritual. Halfway through her meal, her phone vibrated. She glanced at it and saw a message from Qingyu. Shin Yuan, happy birthday. I'm waiting for you in Beijing. Shin Yuan stared at the message for a long time. Qingyu got into that university in Beijing, in the same city as her. It wasn't a coincidence, as she had helped him choose his college entrance exam options. She had said, this school is the safest bet for your score, and there are plenty of internship opportunities in Beijing. She spoke objectively and professionally, like a college admissions consultant, but what she didn't say was this: Beijing is vast, but if you were there too, at least I'd have someone to talk to when I occasionally felt the need to share my thoughts. Shin Yuan put down her phone and continued eating her noodles. The noodles were finished, the soup was gone, and the bottom of the bowl was spotless. With nothing left, she wiped her mouth, paid, and walked out of the small restaurant. The wind at the end of June carried the distinctive heat of summer, warm and cozy against the face. The streets were bustling with people, each with their own destination and each with their own way home. Shin Yuan stood at the street corner, taking a deep breath. 18 years had passed. After 32 years in her previous life and 18 in this one, she lived a total of 50 years before finally becoming someone who didn't need anyone. She couldn't tell if this was a blessing or a curse. Over the 4 years of university, Shin Yuan lived a busy and fulfilling life. Academics were no issue for her. The things she had already learned in her previous life were just a review in this one. She spent more time making money, translation, tutoring, investing. She spent every penny wisely, achieving financial independence in her first year of college, and never asked her family for a single cent again. Shin Jangwo called a few times, and she answered, but the conversations were brief. Shin Jangwo asked if she needed money, and she said no. He asked if she was coming home for the new year, and she said no. When he mentioned that her mom missed her, she paused for 2 seconds, then said really, in a tone so calm it was almost like hearing a not-so-funny joke. Zhou Huilan never called once. Either Shin Jangwo was lying, or Zhou Huilan simply didn't want her. Shin Yuan thought the latter was more likely, but she didn't care anymore. Sun Yan, however, often sent messages. She would send holiday greetings, remind Shin Yuan to dress warmly when the weather changed, and write long, heartfelt messages on Shin Yuan's birthday. What's the point of such superficial words? Shin Yuan always reads them, occasionally replies, but never delves deeper. It's not that she's heartless, she just knows herself too well. She's the type who either gives nothing or gives her all. In her past life, she gave it a try once, only to be utterly devastated. This time, she dared not out of fear of pain, but out of fear that if she ever softened, she would find herself back in that north-facing room, waiting for a door that would never open. During her junior year winter break, Shin Yuan received a call from Shin Jangwo. His voice sounded much older, carrying a weariness Shin Yuan had never heard before. Yuan, your mother is sick. Shin Yuan's grip on her phone tightened slightly. What illness? Cholecystitis. She needs surgery. Come back and see her. Shin Yuan remained silent for a long time. She remembered when Zhou Huilan had surgery in her previous life. She had taken a month's leave to go back and care for her. Every day at the hospital, she kept vigil by the bedside, bathing Zhou Huilan, feeding her, helping her to the bathroom, doing everything a caregiver should. Lying in the hospital bed, Zhou Huilan took her hand and the first thing she said was, "Is Nian Nian busy with work lately? That thorn has been lodged in her heart for 2 lifetimes, and to this day, it still hasn't been pulled out." "I'll send money back," Shin Yuan said, "but I can't come home. It's almost finals, and I can't get away." She made up an excuse, a really lame one, because there weren't any important final exams in the first semester of her junior year, but Shin Jangwo believed her, or maybe he just couldn't be bothered to call her out. Fine. Shin Jangwo's tone carried disappointment, though it was unclear whether it was disappointment in Shin Yuan not coming home or in Shin Yuan as a whole. "Take care of yourself." The call ended. Shin Yuan put down her phone, sat on the sofa in her rented apartment, and stared blankly at the snow falling outside the window. The snow in a Beijing winter is heavy, falling flake by flake, blanketing the entire city in white. A sudden memory came to her, the day she died in her past life. It was also winter, and the snow was just like this. Lying in her hospital bed, she watched the snow fall outside the window and thought to herself, if there was a next life, she would never be a daughter of the Shin family again. Heaven heard her plea and gave her a second chance. She did not waste it. During winter break, Shin Yuan did not go home. Instead, she went to her grandmother's house. Grandma is even older now, needing a cane to walk. Her hearing has deteriorated, and she has to shout into her ear for her to hear, but her spirit is still good, and when she sees Shin Yuan, she smiles like a child, holding her hand tightly and repeating over and over, "My dear has come back, my dear has come back." Shin Yuan brought many things for Grandma: thermal underwear, an electric blanket, a smart pillbox, and Grandma's favorite pastries from Daxiankin. She took out each item one by one, explaining how to use them to Grandma, and when Grandma couldn't hear, she leaned in close and spoke loudly into her ear. After understanding, Grandma took her hand and said, "My dear, you've lost weight." Shin Yuan smiled and said, "No, I've actually gained a couple of pounds." Grandma didn't believe her. She reached out and touched her face, her cloudy old eyes suddenly glistening with tears. "You've had a hard time out there." Shin Yuan's nose tingled with emotion. She squeezed Grandma's hand a little tighter. "No, Grandma, I'm doing just fine, really, I am." She is truly doing well. She has her own savings, her own rented place, and a job that can support her. She doesn't need to answer to anyone, doesn't need to please anyone, and doesn't need to cry secretly in the dead of night only to pretend nothing happened the next day. She is free, but sometimes she wonders if freedom is just another form of loneliness. In Beijing, she has no friends, no social life, and no intimate connections. She is like a solitary island, adrift on a vast ocean, watching the bright lights of others from afar, yet never coming ashore herself. Qingyu had tried to get close to her many times. During his sophomore year, he confessed his feelings under the ginkgo tree at the library entrance. Autumn leaves covered the ground. Golden sunlight bathed him, and the boy had grown into a young man, taller than in high school, with broader shoulders, but still smiling with those 2 little tiger teeth. He said, "Shin Yuan, I like you. I've liked you since our first year of high school." Shin Yuan looked into his eyes, which were clear and filled with anticipation, nervousness, and the sincerity of youth. She almost nodded, because she knew Qingyu was a good person, someone worth trusting. In her past life, she missed it, but in this one, she has a chance to grasp it, but she didn't. "Ching. You," she said, "do you know me?" Qingyu paused for a moment. "Of course I know you. You don't understand." Shin Yuan cut him off. "You don't know why I don't go home for the holidays. You don't know why I never post photos of my family on social media. You don't know why my expression changes when I hear the word mom. The Shin Yuan you like is the girl who seems cool, independent, and like she doesn't care about anything. But the real Shin Yuan is someone who was wounded to the core by her family, someone who will never be able to trust anyone again." She paused, her voice softening. "You deserve someone better, someone whole, healthy, someone capable of loving you, not someone like me." Qingyu stood there, unmoving. As a ginkgo leaf settled on his shoulder, he gazed at Shin Yuan for a long, long time, so long that she thought he was about to give up. Then he said something Shin Yuan would remember for the rest of her life. "Shin Yuan, you are not incomplete, you're just more guarded than others because you know how much it hurts to be wounded. I'm not afraid of your caution. I can wait." Shin Yuan's eyelashes fluttered. She was on the verge of tears. She almost let her guard down completely, ready to throw herself into that warm, clean, youthful embrace and pour out a lifetime's worth of sorrow and tears. But she didn't, because she knew all too well. She knew exactly what kind of person she was. Someone who had locked her heart in a safe and thrown the key into the ocean. No one could ever find that key, not because they didn't try hard enough, but because she never wanted it to be found. It wasn't that she distrusted Qingyu, she distrusted everyone, including herself, so she said, "Don't wait." Then she turned and walked away. The ginkgo leaves were a brilliant yellow that day, and the sunlight was perfect, yet, as Xin Yuan walked through the golden light, she felt her shadow was longer and darker than ever before. She heard footsteps behind her, but no one came after her. In her senior year, Xin Yuan received a full scholarship from a prestigious university abroad and prepared to go overseas for her master's degree. She had taken care of all the paperwork, her visa had been approved, and she had even bought her plane ticket. 1 month before her departure, she returned to her hometown to visit her grandmother. Her grandmother's health had deteriorated badly. She was bedridden and could barely speak. When she saw Xin Yuan, a spark of light suddenly appeared in her cloudy eyes. She tremblingly reached out her hand to touch Xin Yuan's face. "Nanny," her grandmother's voice seemed to come from far away. "Are you leaving?" Xin Yuan held her grandmother's hand, tears welling up in her eyes. "Grandma, I'm going away to study, and I'll come back after I finish." Her grandmother nodded and then suddenly said something that caught Xin Yuan off guard. "Nanny, go find your mother." Xin Yuan froze. "Your mother? She does miss you." Grandma's voice was barely a whisper, as if it took all her strength. "She just doesn't know how to say it. She's stubborn with her words, just like you." Xin Yuan opened her mouth, wanting to say, "She doesn't miss me, she never has," but the words died on her lips, because in her grandmother's eyes, she saw light she had never seen before, a mother's heartache for her daughter, an old woman's longing for reconciliation. Grandma isn't speaking up for Zhou Huilan, she's pleading for her own daughter, no matter how Zhou Huilan treats her. She is still her daughter, and she always hopes her daughter can reconcile with her granddaughter. Xin Yuan neither agreed nor refused. She simply held her grandmother's hand and softly said, "Grandma, take good care of yourself and wait for me to return." Grandma smiled, and then she started to cry. The day Xin Yuan left, Grandma saw her off to the door. The elderly woman leaned on her cane, standing in the winter wind, thin as a withered leaf that could be blown away at any moment. Xin Yuan walked a long way, turned back to look, and saw Grandma still standing there. She didn't look back again, because she was afraid that if she did, she wouldn't be able to leave. Her grandmother passed away in the 3rd month after she left the country. Zhou Huilan called to tell her the news. When Xin Yuan picked up the phone, she heard Zhou Huilan speak in a voice she had never heard before, cautious and careful, saying, Yuan, your grandmother is gone." Xin Yuan stood on the street of a foreign land, surrounded by unfamiliar faces and incomprehensible languages. Clutching her phone, she opened her mouth, wanting to speak, but her throat felt as if it were blocked. Unable to utter a single word, she hung up the phone, crouched down on the sidewalk, hugged her knees, and cried until her whole body trembled. It was the most intense cry she had experienced since her rebirth. It wasn't because Zhou Huilan finally called, or because Xin Jiangwo finally sent a text saying please accept my condolences, or because Sun Yan posted a long tribute to her grandmother on WeChat Moments. It was because she no longer had her grandmother, the one who remembered her birthday when the whole world forgot, the one who came to see her with bags full of things when she was at her loneliest, the one who always thought she was the best girl, was gone. The last person in the world who loved her unconditionally was gone. Xin Yuan wept for a long, long time, until her tears ran dry, until her eyes ached, until she felt completely hollowed out. Crouched on a foreign street, she looked like a child abandoned by the whole world. No one stopped to ask what was wrong. No one offered her a tissue. At last, she was utterly, completely, and unreservedly alone. 5 years after going abroad, Xin Yuan earned her doctorate and found a job at a research institute. She had saved up enough money to buy a small apartment in Beijing. It wasn't big, but it faced south and was filled with sunlight. She placed her grandmother's photo on the desk and would glance at it every day before leaving the house. She never went back to the Shin family home. Over the years, she and Xin Jiangwo would speak on the phone occasionally. The conversation was always the same. Her father would ask, "How have you been?" She would reply, "I'm fine." Then came the silence, followed by the click of the call ending. Zhou Huilan never answers the phone, and she never makes a call herself. Sometimes, Xin Jiangwo would hand her the phone, saying, "Say a few words to Yuan." Zhou Huilan would take it, utter a single "take care of yourself," and then hand it right back. Xin Yuan didn't know how much sincerity was behind that "take care of yourself." She was past the age of agonizing over such things. Sun Yan got married, marrying a businessman, and the wedding was grand. Xin Yuan didn't return, but she sent a gift, a set of very expensive tableware. After receiving it, Sun Yan sent her a long message, essentially saying, "You'll always be my sister, and this home will always be yours. You're welcome to come back anytime." After reading it, Shin Yuan typed 4 words, "I wish you happiness." She wondered how Sun Yin felt when he saw those 4 words, perhaps relief, perhaps guilt, or maybe nothing at all. She didn't want to know. That winter when she was 35, Shin Yuan received a phone call. It wasn't Shin Jiangwo calling, it was his assistant. "Miss Shin, your father isn't well. He's been hospitalized. Your mother asked me to let you know and hopes you can come back." Shin Yuan was in the lab, wearing rubber gloves, with a row of test tubes in front of her. When she heard this, the test tube in her hand wavered, and the liquid inside nearly spilled. What's wrong with him? Liver cancer. It was already in the late stages by the time they found it. Shin Yuan fell silent for a long time, so long that the assistant on the other end of the line thought the call had dropped. Calling out hello several times. "I understand." She hung up the phone, took off her gloves, and placed them on the workbench. She looked at her hands, pale, slender, and distinctly bony, so different from when she was 13. These hands had typed countless words, held countless test tubes, conducted countless experiments, and earned countless sums of money, yet they had never once held the hands of her parents. She took leave, bought a ticket, and flew back to the city she hadn't visited in over a decade. The plane landed at 4 in the morning. The winter airport was as cold as a freezer. Shin Yuan wrapped her coat tightly around her and dragged her suitcase out of the terminal. While waiting for a taxi by the roadside, she saw a star so bright in the sky that it didn't seem real. She remembered what her grandmother had said. Her grandmother said that when people die, they turn into stars and watch over those on Earth. She wanted to ask her grandmother, "Can you see me? Can you see your little girl?" She's doing great now. She has a PhD, works at a research institute, and bought a south-facing house. You don't have to worry about her anymore. She's living well. The taxi arrived, and Shin Yuan got in. Giving the hospital's address, the driver glanced at her in the rearview mirror, probably finding it odd for a woman to be going to the hospital alone in the middle of the night, but he didn't ask any questions. The car drove for 40 minutes before arriving at the hospital. Shin Yuan paid the fare and dragged her suitcase into the inpatient department. The hospital was eerily quiet in the early hours of the morning. Only the light at the nurse's station was on, and the air was filled with the smell of disinfectant, exactly the same as the scent she had smelled before her death in her previous life. She stood outside Shin Jiangwo's hospital room door, her hand resting on the handle. But she didn't push it open. She didn't know why she had come. Had she forgiven him? No. Had she found peace? Not that either. She just felt that it was the most basic courtesy to come and see someone one last time when they were on the verge of death, just like when she died in her previous life and no one came to see her. She knew how painful that feeling was. She didn't want anyone to experience that pain, not even those who had hurt her. Shin Yuan pushed the door open. The hospital room was a private one, quiet and still. Shin Jiangwo lay in bed, connected to various tubes. His face was sallow and gaunt, his features hollowed out, his eyes were closed, and it was impossible to tell if he was asleep or awake. Zhou Huilan sat in a chair beside him, her head resting against the back, also dozing off. Her hair had turned much whiter, her face was now lined with many wrinkles, and she was huddled in her chair. Shin Yuan stood at the door, looking at the two of them, feeling nothing in her heart. It wasn't that the hatred was gone, nor had it faded, but the objects of her hatred had become two frail, aging, and ephemeral beings. You can't hate two people who are on the verge of death, just as you can't hate a rain that has already stopped. Zhou Huilan woke up first. She opened her eyes and saw Shin Yuan standing at the door, momentarily stunned. Then her eyes suddenly welled up with tears, her lips trembled a few times, and she finally managed to say just 2 words, "You're here." Shin Yuan nodded, walked in, placed the suitcase in the corner, and sat down on another chair. Shin Jiangwo opened his eyes at some point, his cloudy pupils turning to look in Shin Yuan's direction. He looked at her for a long time, long enough for Shin Yuan to think he was about to say something important. Then he said something that Shin Yuan would never forget for the rest of her life. "You look just like your mother when she was young." Shin Yuan's eyelashes fluttered slightly. She looked at the man lying on the hospital bed, the man she had called Dad for 35 years, the man who had never hugged her, never praised her, and never said happy birthday to her on her birthday. He said she resembled her mother. It wasn't "you look just like your mother," but rather, "you look just like your mother when she was young." Shin Yuan suddenly understood something. She recalled fragments from her previous life. Zhou Huilan was very beautiful when she was young, with a strong personality, unwilling to give in, and never wanting to show weakness in front of anyone. She married Shin Jiangwo, gave birth to Shin Yuan, but her heart never truly belonged to this family. She was too strong, so strong that she needed no one, not even her own daughter. Shin Yuan suddenly realized that she wasn't unlike Zhou Huilan. She was far too much like her. The same stubbornness, the same sharp tongue, the same refusal to yield, the same willingness to shoulder everything alone rather than utter a single "I need you." It wasn't that Zhou Huilan didn't love her. It was that Zhou Huilan didn't know how to love someone, because Zhou Huilan herself had never been truly loved, but this realization came far too late, 35 years too late, 32 years too late for any time that could have been used for reconciliation. Shin Jiangwo didn't make it through that winter. The day he passed, it snowed heavily, a snowfall as heavy as the day Shin Yuan died. Shin Yuan stood in the hospital corridor, watching the nurse drape the white sheet over Shin Jiangwo's face. Zhou Huilan stood nearby. She didn't cry, just stood there like a tree struck by lightning, outwardly intact, but hollowed out inside. Sun Yan arrived, sobbing uncontrollably, supported by her husband. When she saw Shin Yuan, she rushed over and hugged her, crying, Yuan, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Shin Yuan had no idea what she was apologizing for. Was it for taking away her parents, or for never speaking up for her all these years? Or is it an apology for Sun Yan not visiting her when she died in her previous life? But none of that matters anymore. All the apologies and forgiveness become weightless in the face of death, like the snowflakes outside, melting as soon as they fall. Shin Yuan patted Sun Yan on the back and said, don't cry. Then she walked up to Zhou Huilan. Zhou Huilan looked up at her once cold, impatient eyes that always seemed to look past her now devoid of anything, not warmth, not guilt, not love, but a hollow, aimless emptiness. After losing all support, Shin Yuan opened her mouth, wanting to say something. She wanted to say, Mom, I forgive you, but found the words wouldn't come, because she hadn't forgiven her at all. She wanted to say, Mom, you should come live with me, but found she didn't want to say that either, because she had grown accustomed to life without Zhou Huilan, so she said nothing. She simply reached out and took Zhou Huilan's hand. Zhou Huilan's hand was cold, with large, bony knuckles and rough skin. This is not a pampered hand. It's a hand that has done a lot of housework, worried a lot, but never complained of being tired because of being too prideful. Shin Yuan held this hand and suddenly felt a sharp pang of emotion. It wasn't about being moved or letting go. It was a deep, indescribable sorrow for Zhou Huilan, for herself, and for all those who don't know how to love. After the funeral, Shin Yuan returned to the Shin family home. The house where she had lived for over a decade was now very old. The wallpaper was peeling, the floor was worn, the banister on the stairs was chipped, and the roses in the garden had long since withered. Zhou Huilan lived here alone, and Sun Yan occasionally came to visit her. Shin Yuan entered her own room, the north-facing room. Cold in winter, she froze as she pushed the door open. The room was neatly tidied up. The sheets are new, the curtains have been changed to a warm yellow, and on the table sits a picture frame containing a photo of her as a child, with 2 little braids, smiling with 2 missing front teeth. She doesn't even remember when this photo was taken, because she's never seen it before. Next to the frame is a note, written in Zhou Huilan's handwriting, crooked and uneven, as if it took many attempts to get it right. Yuan, Mom is sorry. Shin Yuan held the note and stood there for a long time. The snow outside continues to fall, 1 flake at a time, landing on the windowsill, in the withered garden, and on this 35-year-late apology, she finally let the tears flow. It wasn't a loud, wailing cry, but a silent, suppressed one. With her whole body trembling, she crouched down, in that room that once made her feel unbearably cold, crying like a 13-year-old child. But this time, no one would bring her a glass of milk, no one would knock on the door to ask what was wrong, and no one cared if she was crying. She finally received the I'm sorry she had waited 35 years for, but it was all too late. Her grandmother, who used to make her sweet and sour pork ribs, was no longer there. The boy who used to stand under the streetlight to give her birthday gifts is gone, and Shin Yuan no longer has the ability to love anyone. She has protected herself so well that she is invulnerable, immune to all harm, and no one can hurt her anymore. But no one can ever enter her heart either. She has gained independence, freedom, and everything she ever wanted, except for happiness. The following spring, Shin Yuan finished dealing with all her affairs and returned to Beijing. She entered her south-facing apartment, where the sunlight was just right, illuminating the photo of her grandmother, whose warm and bright smile greeted her. She sat on the sofa, turned on the TV, and flipped to a random channel. The TV was playing a family drama, with a family gathered around the table eating, laughing and arguing, creating a lively atmosphere. She watched for 2 seconds, then changed the channel. Another variety show, with celebrities talking about their parents, laughing uncontrollably. Changed the channel. News report about Mother's Day activities in some place, where children washed their mother's feet. Changed the channel and ad. A daughter calls her mom and says, Mom, I miss you. Shin Yuan turned off the TV. The room fell silent, with only the sunlight remaining, warm on her face. She leaned back on the sofa, closed her eyes, and remembered the line she had written in her notebook on the day of her rebirth. From today on, Shin Yuan lives only for herself. She did it over 22 years. She transformed herself from a little girl craving love into an adult who needed no one. She Had a degree, a job, a house, savings, and all the worldly success one could desire. What she lacked was someone who would knock on her door late at night, holding a cup of warm milk, and say, "Yuan Yuan, go to bed early." Not Sun Yan. Sun Yan had never done anything wrong, but she had never truly, wholeheartedly loved Shen Yuan. It was just guilt, just compensation, just a desperate need for peace of mind. The only person in this world who ever loved Shen Yuan unconditionally was her grandmother. And now, her grandmother was gone. Shen Yuan opened her eyes, picked up her phone, and scrolled through her contacts. Her contact list only had about 20 people, most of them work-related. She scrolled to the bottom and saw a name, Chinyu. She opened the chat window. The last message was from 3 years ago. Chinyu had sent a photo of the snow in Beijing, with the caption, "It's snowing here. Is it cold where you are?" She didn't reply. She typed a few words, deleted them, typed again. Deleted again, repeating this several times. In the end, she sent nothing, exited the chat window, and put her phone aside. The sunlight outside was beautiful, and spring in Beijing was full of flowers. Even the air smelled sweet. Shen Yuan stood by the window, watching a mother and her child flying a kite in the garden below. The child ran fast, the kite soared high, and the mother chased after them, laughing and calling, "Slow down, slow down." As she watched, Shen Yuan's lips unconsciously curved into a smile. Then she picked up her phone and sent a message to Zhou Huilan. This was the first time in her life she had reached out to Zhou Huilan on her own, and also the last. "Mom, I forgive you." After sending the message, she placed her phone on the table, walked into the kitchen, and cooked herself a bowl of noodles. The noodles were handmade, the broth was simmered with bones, and there was a sunny side-up egg on top with crispy edges around the yolk, her favorite kind. She sat at the dining table, facing her grandmother's photo, slowly eating the bowl of noodles. Just as she took the last bite, her phone vibrated. She picked it up to check, and it was a message from Zhou Huilan. It was just one word, "Okay." Shen Yuan looked at the word "okay" and smiled. It wasn't a happy smile, nor a sad one. It was the serene, peaceful smile of someone who had finally finished everything they needed to do. It was like finishing a very, very long marathon. No one was waiting for her at the finish line, but she had run it all the same. She didn't need anyone waiting for her at the finish line, because she was her own destination. She put down her phone, washed the dishes, tidied up the kitchen, then sat down at her desk and opened the notebook that had been with her for 22 years. The notebook was very old, its cover worn pale, the corners curled up, and its pages densely packed with writing. She turned to the last page and looked at the words she had written at 13, the childish, forceful, almost obsessive handwriting. Every single stroke seemed to be saying the same thing, "I won't get hurt again." Shen Yuan picked up her pen and, in the blank space on the final page, wrote one last sentence, "I won, but I'm so tired." She put down her pen, leaned back in her chair, and closed her eyes. The sunlight outside gradually dimmed, turning from golden to orange-red, and then from orange-red to gray-blue. The evening breeze of spring blew in, stirring the curtains, flipping the pages of the notebook on the desk, rustling softly as if someone were whispering something Shen Yuan didn't hear. She fell asleep. This time, she didn't dream of the white hospital room again. She dreamed of her grandmother. Grandma stood in the doorway of the old house, wearing that faded floral shirt, holding a plate of freshly cooked sweet and sour pork ribs, smiling and waving to her, "Sweetheart, you're home." Shen Yuan smiled in her dream, ran over, and threw herself into her grandmother's arms. Grandma's embrace was so warm. It smelled of osmanthus cakes, of sunshine, and of the only thing in this world that made her feel safe. She was finally home, back to the world before she turned 13, back to a time before anyone told her you are not worthy of love, back to the age when she still believed tomorrow would be better. She wasn't leaving ever again. The end. Story 2. After falling from the construction site, my father suffered a spinal cord injury that left him paralyzed from the waist down. Both sons moved abroad without a second thought and settled there. Since then, I've been taking care of my father single-handedly for 10 years, with no regrets. But when Dad won 20 million in the lottery, he immediately called his sons living overseas. He threw $5,000 at me and cut ties. I was so furious I had a stroke and died. When I woke up again, I was back on the day I bought the lottery ticket. My dad shoved 5,000 in cash at me and told me to get lost. "So what if you've taken care of me for 10 years? That's your duty as a daughter." He pointed at the house again. "Don't even think about this house. It's all reserved for your brothers." Both brothers had just returned from abroad and were dutifully attending to their parent by the bedside. They were bustling about with glee, practically wishing the old man would kick the bucket right then and there. My father lay on the sickbed, gazing at them with tender affection, a picture of paternal kindness and filial devotion. Meanwhile, I stood there in my ailing body, clutching the paltry 5,000 yuan handed out like charity, completely at a loss. The more I thought about it, the angrier I grew, recounting all the hardships of the past decade, how I'd slaved to earn money, how I'd cared for father. I was just describing my brother's utter lack of filial duty when a glass came flying straight at my head. Dad was screaming hysterically, his eyes bulging with rage. "You knew I'd won the jackpot all along." Didn't you, ungrateful daughter? You're just after my 20 million, aren't you? 20 million, so you've been guarding against me all this time. Dad, didn't you say you only won 10,000? My father stammered, shot a meaningful look at my two older brothers, and then started yelling at me. From this day forward, we are done. You are no longer my daughter. And just like that, I was thrown out of the house, with my father's furious shouts and the mocking laughter of my brothers and their wives ringing in my ears. On a freezing winter night, I wandered the streets alone and furious, when a sudden dizziness washed over me. I had a stroke at just 30 years old and died there on the icy pavement. Looking back, my life felt utterly wasted, and now I'd returned to the day my dad asked me to buy a lottery ticket. Lila, could you buy a lottery ticket for your dad? He pulled a 10 yuan bill from the tin box by his bed and handed it to me with a smile. For the past decade, my father's only hobby has been buying lottery tickets. Though he's never won any significant prize, I couldn't bear to disappoint him, so every now and then I'd slip some spare change into that tin box while he was asleep. Dad, you don't need to give me money, don't worry, I'll go buy it for you right now. This time, I didn't take the $10, nor did I push Dad to go buy it himself. You animal, I still remember the lottery numbers, and I want to buy the ticket myself. I want the lottery ticket to be completely and solely mine. Dad, I'm a bit tied up right now and can't take you to buy one. I'll bring you a ticket after work. Father was reluctant, but paralyzed as he was, he could only watch helplessly as I walked away. In my previous life, I had to will Father to buy every single lottery ticket, from start to finish. Every step of the transaction was meticulously captured on camera. I later realized the old fox was worried I'd pocket the winnings if he ever hit the jackpot. In our previous life, he lied and told me he'd only won 10,000 yuan. When I offered to help him claim the prize, he refused and secretly asked a community worker instead. After collecting the winnings, he said he'd give me 5,000 yuan. I was so touched that I didn't suspect a thing, and actually treated him even better. Clutching the lottery ticket in my hand, I wiped away my tears and pulled myself out of the memories. Then I made a phone call. Bro, Dad won the lottery. You all need to come back right away. I'm not kidding. It's 20 million, come home quick. I lied. I wanted to watch them tear each other apart like dogs fighting, only to end up with nothing but an empty basket. I bought another lottery ticket and gave it to my dad. A few days later, Dad and I sat together watching the lottery draw on TV, seated in his wheelchair. Dad leaned forward with his neck craned, squinting intently at the television screen. After the lottery draw ended, Dad let out an exasperated sigh and carefully tucked the ticket into his breast pocket. Ugh, no jackpot again, just a measly $1,000 too. He then turned to me and snapped that it was my fault for not taking him to buy it myself. You've got terrible luck, next time I'm buying it myself. After Dad went back inside, I pulled out another lottery ticket and carefully checked the winning numbers. It was true, I'd won 20 million. 2 days later, my brothers came home. Dad was utterly astonished, but so overjoyed it was like a medical miracle. He nearly rose from his wheelchair. I made a point of doing my makeup and dyeing my hair. This time around, they didn't mistake me for the nanny in my past life. When they saw me, they barely recognized me and ended up treating me like a maid. You're the nanny, right? Hurry up and get us some water. We're parched. Come on, quick. They haven't changed a bit. My brothers have aged well. Compared to 10 years ago, they've only developed a few more crow's feet, unlike me, working 3 jobs a day. At just 30, my hair's already half gray, with a gaunt frame and a thoroughly haggard face. When they found out, their jaws dropped in shock, utterly speechless. Oh dear, little sister, you don't take care of yourself at all. How can your husband stand it? That was my eldest sister-in-law speaking, looking at me with utter disdain while my second sister-in-law stood by, pointing and whispering about me. I never married in my previous life. If I had, there would have been no one to take care of Dad. I served them tea with a warm smile, amused by how foolish I had been in my past life. Big brother, second brother, Dad has missed you so much. You haven't even called in 10 years. We've been worried sick, knowing they were in the wrong. They avoided responding and quickly changed the subject. The 2 older brothers started putting on a show. The eldest brother immediately pulled out a box of bird's nest and handed it to his wife. Go warm this up for Dad and make sure he drinks it. The second brother then wheeled Dad downstairs to take him for a walk and get some sun. Honey, hurry to the market and get everything ready for Dad's meal. The 4 of them were bustling about, creating quite a lively scene, while I just sat back and watched without saying a word. This went on for a whole week, with my 2 older brothers never bringing up the lottery ticket. They thought Dad was testing them, so I ended up having a rather relaxed week. My 2 sisters-in-law took care of all the household chores. My eldest brother would go out to buy medicine, while the second brother handled the grocery shopping. Dad would lie in bed or sit in his wheelchair, basking in the fleeting warmth of family life. These were the happiest days he'd had in a decade, his laughter more genuine than ever. The time to claim the prize has finally arrived. If all goes as expected, Dad will likely ask second brother to take him to claim the prize when they go out for some sun later. I quietly followed along and slipped out the door without a sound. I've already bought tomorrow's bus ticket. The grand prize needs to be collected downtown. In his previous life, my father had community workers buy him a bus ticket and even escort him there. After returning, he specifically told them not to tell me and gave them a 5,000 yuan red envelope as hush money. But before going, I had to see the show. Sure enough, my second brother wheeled my father to the lottery shop. Dad, can I only redeem the prize here? His father looked puzzled and retorted, if not here, then where? Second brother was still basking in the joy of winning the big prize, too caught up to think much, just eager to split the money after cashing in. Soon after, a commotion broke out inside. Second brother's voice boomed with unusual intensity as he argued vehemently that it was impossible. The two of them were shoved out the door by the lottery shop clerk. Second brother looked visibly upset, while Dad appeared utterly bewildered, his hands gripping the wheelchair's armrests tightly. Dad, do you have any other lottery tickets? What other lottery ticket? This is the only one. Dad seemed completely thrown by the question. I could tell he was getting nervous. Hearing that, second brother felt he'd been made a fool of. He just turned and walked off, leaving Dad standing there by himself. 3. It was a downhill slope too. Second brother could be so heartless. If I hadn't stepped in and held him back in time, Dad might not have made it. Lila, thank goodness you're here. Your brother, he's a monster. Dad gripped my hand tightly, terrified I might leave him behind. I took a picture of second brother's back and sent it to eldest brother. I drafted another text message. Big bro, you've got to stop second brother from leaving. Dad gave him all the lottery winnings. Big brother replied almost instantly, don't worry Lila, there's no way I'll let him keep it all for himself. We'll split the money when I get it. I calmly put my phone away and helped Dad back inside. Just as expected, second brother started packing too. Leave as soon as he got home. When Dad and I arrived home, first brother and second brother were wrestling and cursing, neither willing to back down. How dare you try to take it all for yourself? Do you even respect me as your eldest brother? Second brother grew even more furious. What do you mean, keeping it all to himself? Dad never even won anything. Go ask him yourself if you don't believe me. Dad was still angry with second brother and didn't want to explain. Seeing that Dad remained silent, second brother started making assumptions with an air of self-righteousness. I bet Dad's just hoarding it all for himself and doesn't want to share with anyone. Dad pointed a trembling finger at second brother, speechless and nearly choking with rage. I quickly patted his back to help him catch his breath, while secretly laughing my head off inside. Now this is quite the spectacle. The three of us siblings were never close growing up, all because our parents played favorites. Mom always doted on our eldest brother, while Dad clearly favored the second-born. I was the one left out in the cold, constantly bullied by both my older brothers. Now that Mom's gone, our eldest brother takes it for granted that Dad sides with the second son, which makes him surprisingly receptive to what I say. They fought all night, smashing everything breakable in the house. Dad was so terrified he hid in his room, not even daring to breathe loudly. I knew I had to leave the next day no matter what. They weren't fools, and they'd figure it out soon enough. Early the next morning, I packed a few essentials and walked out the door, but when I opened the door, my second sister-in-law was standing there, hands on her hips and lips pursed, looking at me with a smirk. And where might you be off to, little sister? I made an excuse about going to work, and she immediately tried to snatch my bag, but she's been pampered all her life. How could she possibly match my strength? I snatched it back in no time. Besides, ever since my rebirth these past few days, I've been recuperating and seeing doctors. My health has improved quite well. I've even put on some weight and look noticeably younger. My older brother heard the commotion inside and rushed out, so I seized the moment to fake a fall. I cried while looking at my sister-in-law. Sis, you already tipped the lottery winnings. Why are you grabbing my meager savings? This is money I earned myself. It's not much, and Dad definitely didn't give it to me, for... My sister-in-law looked completely baffled by my words, which only made my eldest brother angrier. He quickly pulled me to my feet. He started yelling at my sister-in-law, demanding they return the money immediately. Lila, you go ahead to work. I'll handle things here. I pretended to wipe my tears, nodded with a pout, and hurried downstairs to leave. I got into the taxi I had already booked and headed to the train station. I put the lottery ticket into the empty cigarette box my dad had finished, wrapped it in several layers of cloth, secured it with tape, and firmly stitched it into the left pocket of my pants. There's still an hour until the train departs. We can't afford any trouble during this time, but it would be a shame if there were no drama to watch. I overestimated them. I thought they'd chase me all the way to the station to settle the score, but now, there's not a soul in sight. I texted them and gave them the whole story, leaving nothing out, except for the part about winning the Lottery. There were 3 minutes left until ticket check. Just as I expected, my eldest and second brothers showed up. The four of them were scanning the waiting hall, searching for any sign of me. With just 1 minute left, I stood in line holding my ID card. They must have spotted me. I waved to them from the back of the line. Lila, don't you dare move. The four of them barged through the crowd like a gang of thugs, shoving people aside without a care, but the crowd and staff weren't having it. Immediately blocking their path. Hey, where are your manners? Get to the back of the line. Are you insane? God damn it. Just our luck to run into these psychos today. Some people have no manners at all. The scene quickly descended into chaos. Staff quickly identified the source of the disturbance and escorted them away from the security checkpoint. Get to the back of the line. No cutting. I showed my ID, got my ticket checked, and then stepped aside. Turning back, I waved at them mockingly. They clearly saw it and were so furious they tried to charge at me again, but soon security showed up. I saw the bitter resentment in their eyes as they were escorted away. I started a group chat and posted a photo in it. This was taken during their heated argument with the crowd and scuffle with security guards. Then they added the caption, "What a spectacle," but I doubt they have time to check it now. They're probably still being questioned by the police. The thought nearly made me burst out laughing right there on the train. While going through the prize redemption process, I saw them hysterically cursing in the group chat. Every single one was a full 60-second voice message. I only listened to the first one, but the language was so vile that I recorded all the voice messages. The prize collection went smoothly, and the money arrived in just 2 to 3 minutes. I checked my balance and felt completely confident. I edited the short video I took at the train station, pairing it with their curses directed at me, making it quite dramatic. I'm sure it will cause quite a stir on my social media feed. I also shared it in several family group chats, and even had someone get me into their high school and college alumni groups to spread it there too. My eldest and second brothers have always been obsessed with saving face. They were top students since childhood, the well-behaved boys in front of relatives. But with this video going viral, they've completely lost face. The relatives had caught wind of their return too. Some were just there for the drama in the group chat, while others outright called them ungrateful children. So you finally decided to show your faces, abandoning your own father with your sister for 10 years. You're absolutely heartless. I'm coming over tomorrow. You better be ready. I'll teach you little brats a lesson you won't forget. The relatives were tearing into them left and right, and they all had my back then. It was thanks to those relatives that we managed to raise the funds for Dad's life-saving surgery. Over the years, they've also given me financial support from time to time. They'd hand me a few hundred here and there, and seeing how hard I had it, no one ever asked for the money back. I bought my return ticket. The show was just getting started. Right after getting off the train, I purchased that spacious downtown apartment I'd had my eye on for a while, spent a full $5 million, and it stings a bit. But I know I should treat myself better in this life. I posted pictures of the house in the family group chat, letting them know about the housewarming dinner tomorrow. Instantly, the group chat exploded. "Oh Lila, are you okay? Did something happen? Please don't tell me you got scammed." "You're right, Lila. If anything's bothering you, you must tell your aunt." These were the relatives who had helped me before. Reading their caring words made my eyes well up. I just got lucky. I wasn't scammed, so please don't worry. That comment made the group chat even more lively. They all started sending voice messages, laying it on thick with flattery. "Oh, I always knew Lila would go far. Lila dear, remember when I held you as a child?" These were all distant relatives I rarely saw, who had never lifted a finger to help me before. Some had even mocked me. My eldest brother called immediately. He accused me of stealing our dad's lottery ticket, insisting the winning ticket should have been Dad's. I calmly told them to relax and said we could discuss everything after the housewarming dinner. The next day, almost everyone from the group chat showed up. I hadn't seen many of these people in over a decade, and some I hadn't laid eyes on since I was old enough to form memories. Every last one of them was just here to get a piece of the pie. I checked the time. The car picking up my aunt and uncle should be arriving any minute now. Both their families have always treated me well, in this life and the last. My aunt and uncle's family isn't doing too well either, even though they were just coming for a simple housewarming meal. They still brought loads of gifts. "Lila, these are cabbages from your aunt's garden, plus 2 chickens and 2 ducks. With tears in my eyes, I quickly took the gifts and ushered her and the family to the sofa, but she hesitated to sit, worried about dirtying it. "Don't worry, Auntie, please, have a seat." My uncle, who lives in the city, brought plenty of fruit along with beef and lamb. Unlike the fawning relatives in the living room, they headed straight for the kitchen to help the moment they arrived. "Uncle, Auntie, there's no need to trouble yourselves. I've already ordered food from a restaurant. It'll be delivered soon." My aunt hugged me joyfully, nodding and saying, "Life is finally looking up for me." Just then, my eldest brother and the others arrived, pounding on the door with loud thuds. "Lila, open this door right now." But the moment they stepped inside, my uncle and my aunt's husband started chasing after them, yelling and cursing. They couldn't even Get close to me, my aunt shielded me, pulling me into her embrace. You little brat, give me back my lottery ticket. Dad's face turned crimson with rage, screaming at the top of his lungs, insisting I'd stolen his lottery ticket. Dad, I gave you your ticket ages ago. This one's mine. It has nothing to do with you. My older brothers threatened to sue me in court, demanding not only the lottery winnings but also 100,000 yuan in emotional damages. I just laughed and told them to go right ahead. Realizing they wouldn't get anywhere, they stormed out, slamming the door behind them. The relatives were all buzzing with curiosity, asking how much I'd actually won. 20 million. The crowd's expressions were a sight to behold. Some were shocked, some envious, but most were downright jealous. All these years, I've known exactly who's had my back and who hasn't. The moment those words were spoken, some people's faces were painted with sheer embarrassment. These are 2 cards, each with a million. Everyone's eyes were glued to them. I handed the cards to my aunt and uncle respectively, expressing my gratitude. They hesitated to accept, saying they hadn't been of much help over the years. After much persuasion, they reluctantly took the cards. The other relatives grew restless, recounting all the good they'd done for me ages ago, back when I was too young to even remember. Some, realizing they couldn't get money outright, started asking to borrow from me. Uncle, why did you accuse me of stealing money from your house when I was 6? My uncle lowered his head and turned away. Auntie, do you still remember this scar? I rolled up my sleeve to reveal a 3-centimeter long scar. 6. Her son was the one who pushed me, but they turned around and blamed me to my parents, and then he even beat me up. Auntie looked uncomfortable and muttered, you still remember such a trivial thing. I heard that. You call this a minor issue, just as expected from someone with no integrity. Wrongdoers never see their own faults. Meanwhile, Uncle quickly nudged his son beside him. Hurry up, apologize to your cousin. He glanced at the card in Aunt's hand, hesitated for a moment as if mustering great resolve, then reluctantly muttered an apology. The hopeful look in my uncle and Aunt's eyes struck me as deeply ironic. So money really can buy family affection, but this kind of affection is worthless. I said to these people, enunciating every single word, I will always remember how well you treated me. I then called the neighborhood security and had them all escorted out. My brother and his crew moved surprisingly fast. The police showed up at my door within 2 days. I cooperated with the investigation with complete composure. The police worked efficiently too, pulling surveillance footage and payment records from the lottery shop. I made it perfectly clear that the winning lottery ticket was mine. Strictly speaking, the $10,000 Dad won should rightfully be mine too. So when they kept calling and making a fuss after realizing they couldn't get anything out of me, I told them about it. Sure enough, they quieted down for a while after that. The biggest regret of my past life was dropping out of college during my sophomore year. I was only 20 then. After learning about my father's paralysis and my brother and sister-in-law moving abroad, I started working odd jobs. I had nothing to my name, not even a single marketable skill, but I've always had a sweet tooth and dreamed of owning a pastry shop, so I signed up for a baking class to learn the craft. Soon after, I leased a storefront near my neighborhood, but on the very first day of business, my brother and his wife showed up to cause trouble. They unfurled a banner at the entrance that read, "Ungrateful daughter abandons paralyzed father to live in luxury." The scene quickly turned chaotic, with a crowd gathering at the shop entrance. My uncle and aunt stopped me from going outside. "Lila, let us check it out first. Keep quiet." My uncle and aunt were outnumbered, and my brother and sister-in-law were so shameless they could twist black into white and white into black. Everyone started cursing, even targeting uncles and aunts. I stepped out and pulled them behind me, standing face to face with my brother and his wife. "You brought this on yourselves. Don't blame me for what happens next." I glanced at my brother and his wife, then pulled a thick ledger from my bag. "This covers all the expenses for Dad's medical treatments and daily needs over the past 10 years. I started keeping these records just to hold my 2 older brothers accountable when they returned, hoping to get some money to keep Dad alive. Little did I know these records would come to my aid in such a way today. I pointed at my brothers and their wives, accusing them of abandoning our father and their young sister 10 years ago to live it up abroad. She recounted the hardships of the past decade, then produced chat logs and call recordings. But the moment they found out I'd won the lottery, they rushed back to the country and demanded I hand it over. Then I heard my father's voice. A narrow path gradually opened through the crowd as my uncle wheeled my father toward the shop entrance. "My son is telling the truth. They're in on it too." He pointed at my uncle and aunt, slinging accusations. Then he turned his finger toward me. "You ungrateful daughter, give me back that lottery ticket." I glanced at my father. "Dad, how could you be so partial? I'm the one who's been taking care of you for 10 years. I then pulled up a surveillance video I had installed at home to keep an eye on Dad while I was at work, just in case anything happened. 7. I fast-forwarded the footage at triple speed. The frames only showed me bustling around and Dad lying paralyzed in bed. There was no sign of my brother or sister-in-law at all. The onlookers started feeling sorry for me and all said they wanted to buy my desserts. Thanks to the buzz my brother and his wife stirred up, the desserts sold incredibly well, completely selling out. In under an hour, some customers even placed orders for tomorrow, which made my brother and his wife even angrier. My sister-in-law was so furious she actually passed out. I brought a fruit basket to visit my sister-in-law at the hospital. I accidentally overheard the conversation between the doctor and my elder brother. My sister-in-law has breast cancer and will likely need a full mastectomy of her right breast to survive. She threw the fruit basket on the floor, screaming that I was the one who caused her illness. I'm the one who caused her breast cancer. I picked up the fruits one by one. Feeding them to these people is worse than feeding stray dogs. You're giving me too much credit, sister-in-law. We haven't seen each other in 10 years, and you're still blaming me for this. Yes, it's you. Get out of here. I can't stand the sight of you. Honey, you've got to stand up for me right now, or I don't think I'll make it through the night. My sister-in-law started egging on my brother, sobbing uncontrollably as if she'd been terribly wronged. I shook my head and was about to leave when my brother stopped me. Don't think I won't hit you just because you're my little sister. I'm not above doing it. I saw him clench his fists, looking like he was about to throw a punch. This is a hospital, buddy. If you're itching for a trip to the police station, go ahead and try. The man's fists remained clenched. But just as I thought things were about to turn ugly, his phone rang. He visibly swallowed hard. You'll pay for this. He shot me a glare and stormed out. In one swift motion, he bolted the door shut. My sister-in-law watched with glee, mentioning how my brother had been practicing taekwondo overseas. Just as I was about to call the police, my brother walked in, looking extremely upset. Honey, slap her a few times for me. But the slap never came. Instead, he grinned, pulled up a chair, and practically begged me to sit down with sickening flattery. He even handed me a glass of water and placed some fruit on the nightstand. Honey, what are you doing? Hit her. Shut your mouth. The older brother yelled at his wife, startling her into silence. Then he turned to me with a creepy smile that sent chills down my spine. Weren't you about to hit me just now? Big brother, what's this about? As if possessed, my eldest brother started apologizing to me, and even said he'd split Dad's medical expenses from the past decade evenly with second brother. My sister-in-law immediately objected, calling him a clueless fool. The eldest brother, fed up, slapped his wife across the face with the back of his hand. Shut up, this is my sister. Not only the eldest brother, but the second brother also arranged over a dozen lavish dishes at the restaurant. At the banquet, with great anguish and regret, he pinned the blame for abandoning their father and sister 10 years ago entirely on his two sisters-in-law. My sisters-in-law are usually quite feisty, but this time they stayed quiet and all apologized to me. Interesting. If I hadn't overheard his conversation with second brother, I would have actually believed they'd changed. Eldest brother and second brother used to run a business together overseas and even started a small company, but they ran into some trouble recently, so when they heard Dad won the lottery, they rushed back without delay. That call at the hospital came from overseas. They went bankrupt, lost everything they had abroad, and were left penniless. I didn't expose them. Instead, I played along and acted out this whole devoted siblings charade. Sure enough, the next day they came asking me for money. They prepared a lavish feast at home, and during the meal, they started exchanging meaningful glances. My sister-in-law began clutching her chest and complaining of pain. I immediately feigned concern. Brother, this isn't sustainable for sister-in-law. If it needs to be removed, it should be removed. The eldest brother hesitated for a moment, and a sorrowful expression instantly washed over his face. Lila, you have no idea, big brother. How could I possibly afford the medical treatment? Feigning confusion, I quickly asked, how could that be? Your overseas business is doing so well. This small amount is nothing to you. My second brother started putting on a show, tearfully telling me the company was in trouble, going bankrupt. They quickly waved their hands, saying they just needed some capital to tide them over, and started painting this rosy picture for me. They claimed that with just $5 million, they could make another $5 million within 6 months. Listen, sis, I'm your brother. Of course I'll put you first. I wouldn't even consider giving this opportunity to anyone else. Sounds good? I agreed, and they were absolutely thrilled. They immediately handed over their bank account number. I calmly asked my second sister-in-law to fetch me 2 sheets of paper and a pen. I'll dictate. You write. They hesitated, unsure of what I was up to. Lila, we're family. Do we really need an IOU? My older brother asked cautiously, while his wife muttered under her breath, "Why not just give it outright, lending it instead? How stingy." The eldest brother must have stepped on his wife's foot under the table, making her yelp in pain. "Little sister, don't you trust your big brothers?" "That's right," I said with unwavering determination, and Dad's expression began to shift. "Lila, I'm ordering you, transfer the money, and we can still be a family." Looks like Dad's losing his grip, even. Brothers should settle accounts clearly. I slammed the pen down and turned to leave. My eldest brother stepped forward and stopped me in my tracks. "Don't be angry, little sister. I'll write it. I'll write it." I handed 2 sheets of paper to my eldest and second eldest brothers, asking each to write one. Each would borrow 5 million, and repay it within 6 months after they handed me the IOU. I asked them to come with me. They happily assumed I was going to transfer the money until we arrived at a law firm. "Lila, what's the meaning of this? Why are we here?" "For notarization. Gentlemen, you're in business. Surely you're familiar with the procedure." Their faces turned ashen, all pretense of civility gone. Seeing their reaction, I produced 2 IOUs and made to tear them up. They rushed forward to stop me, and the eldest brother gritted his teeth. "Fine, let's get it notarized then, soon enough." With the lawyer notarizing the IOU, there was no way to deny the debt at first. Both my uncle and aunt advised me against lending the money, worrying they might not pay it back. Seeing how I handled it, they felt reassured. I wasn't unaware of my brother's intentions. It was simply about borrowing money with no plan to repay, but now they have no choice but to pay up even if they default. There's still Dad's house to fall back on. That's what I've been after all along. In the dead of night, a stranger with a familiar-looking profile picture sent me a friend request. It was my older brother's classmate who told me that my brother had borrowed money from him. He checked with other classmates and found they'd all been approached for loans too, totaling around $1 million. He added me to a group chat. "Lila, how's your brother's overseas company doing? It's gone bankrupt." The group chat exploded at this revelation. Turns out the guy had lied about his overseas company being highly profitable. Blinded by the prospect of easy money, they all jumped in with investments. "Oh no, is he going to disappear with the money?" This speculation hit everyone like a bolt from the blue. Just then, my sister-in-law called. Through tears, she begged me to let her stay at my place for a few days. When I asked why, it turned out my older brother wanted a divorce. My sister-in-law had surgery recently. After her mastectomy, their intimate life became strained, and my brother started seeing someone else. My sister-in-law caught them in the act at a hotel, and all hell broke loose between them. I was the one who tipped her off about the hotel. My brother has always been a womanizer, and I've been investigating since my sister-in-law was diagnosed with cancer. Sure enough, I uncovered his affair. They don't have any children, which made my brother even more brazen. He didn't even flinch when he was caught red-handed. Even a sow can produce offspring, yet after all these years you've given me nothing. I've shown you every kindness imaginable. In the end, he actually demanded a divorce. When my sister-in-law refused, he threw her out of the house. I took her in and comforted her with great care. "The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Sis, you can't divorce him right now." She asked if I knew something, so I told her what my classmate suspected. As it turned out, she had no idea that my brother had borrowed $1 million from his classmate. "That's very possible. Your brother has been acting so secretive lately, and treating me like this." As she spoke, she began to cry. My sister-in-law is a smart woman. She knows my brother responds better to a soft approach than a hard one. Whenever she reminisces with him about the past, he always lets her stay. Sure enough, she managed to return home. "My passport and ID card are missing. Your brother hid them. We sleep in separate rooms, but no one is allowed into his room. He even put a special lock on it." My sister-in-law is quite clever. She found all the domestic and international bank cards and hid them away. This way, even if he fled abroad, he wouldn't be able to take all the money with him. I also had my sister-in-law put some of the bank cards in my second brother's room. Sure enough, that very night, my eldest brother was frantically searching for the cards, with my sister-in-law guiding us. We finally found it in my second brother's room. The two of them immediately got into an argument, as expected. My second brother had no idea about this matter. When he realized he'd been betrayed and was being left to shoulder the dead alone, he was so enraged that he kicked my eldest brother right in the stomach. My sister-in-law sent me the video, and I couldn't stop laughing. Before long, my second brother called and summoned me over to complain about our eldest brother. "Lila, your eldest brother is planning to abscond with the money. I think you should come and see this for yourself." I readily agreed, as this had been part of my plan all along. When I arrived, the two were already grappling with each other, and I saw my sister-in-law seized the opportunity to kick my eldest brother in the groin a few times. He was howling in pain, while I was doubled over with laughter. Dad had long since hidden in the room, peering out anxiously through the crack in the door. Every now and then he'd pop his head out to try and break up the fight, but after being sharply told off, he'd immediately retreat back into the room and not come out again. I secretly called the police, then told my sister-in-law to break the lock on my eldest brother's door. The police showed up in about 10 minutes and spent quite some time breaking up the fight. Both men were seeing red, neither would back down, and they ended up being hauled away by the police. You're both coming down to the station with me, my sister-in-law and I searched for a while before finally spotting something suspicious in a corner. The floorboards showed signs of being pried loose, but it looked like deliberate tampering. My sister-in-law and I lifted them together and found an envelope containing the ID card and passport. My eldest and second brothers didn't return until 2 hours later. My sister-in-law was already waiting there, holding the marriage certificate, ready to file for divorce. The big brother immediately dashed to his room, making a sound like he was tearing up the floorboards. The big brother let out a roar and rushed out in a hurry. I waved the envelope in my hand. Big brother, do you think your little sister is a fool? Seeing this, my brother started his usual routine of playing the victim. We all saw through it, but my sister-in-law was so fed up that she called him out and threatened to divorce him. When my brother saw I wasn't budging, he decided to throw in the towel completely. He lay on the ground, looking completely defeated and resigned to his fate. I don't have money, but I've got my life to give. I checked the time and knew the house was about to get lively again. Soon came frantic knocking at the door. It was the classmates my eldest brother had borrowed money from. Seeing this, my eldest brother scrambled up from the floor, but was intercepted by my second brother halfway to the inner rooms. The house instantly turned into a bustling marketplace. Everyone was clamoring for their money back, luggage in hand, threatening to camp out right there if they weren't repaid. Some even started pocketing anything of value they could lay their hands on. Others lit fires to cook meals, turning the place into a complete disaster zone. 10, left with no choice, my brother had to hand over what was left of the money to his classmates who'd come to collect their debts. Seeing they hadn't lost much, they all gradually dispersed and went home. The only debt he didn't repay was my $5 million. I made it crystal clear to them. No money, no return of their passports and IDs. It's a waiting game now. Anyone can see those two have blown through every last cent of that $5 million. Seeing the situation, second brother quickly nudged Dad out of the room, though he clearly didn't want to come. Big brother also walked over to Dad's side and stood there for a good while before finally speaking. Dad, do you have any money left? Suddenly, all eyes in the room were fixed on Dad. Dad, please save me. Even if you won't save me, at least save second brother. Dad, sitting in his wheelchair, was so anxious his hands were trembling, insisting he had no money either. Then he turned to look at me. Lila, please help your brothers. Won't you? Let's just forget about the money. I'd never heard him speak to me with such groveling deference, yet all I felt was bitter irony. But Dad, you do have money. At those words, my eldest and second brothers felt deceived. Their attitudes shifted instantly as they started demanding Dad hand over the money. Lila, you ungrateful child, how could I possibly have any money? I pointed at the house, and those two brothers, quick on the uptake, immediately rushed to Dad's room to search for the property deed. In his haste to push the wheelchair, Dad lost his balance and toppled sideways, his hands trembling uncontrollably. My house, that's my house. He lay on the ground moaning in pain, his eyes fixed intently on the two brothers inside the room. What sin have I committed to deserve this? When I tried to help him up, he pushed me away and started cursing at me. I never should have given birth to you. You'll get what's coming to you. My hands froze midair as I listened to his torrent of abuse, completely spellbound. The brothers soon emerged with the property deed. After a cursory glance at our father lying on the ground, they ignored him and hurriedly photographed the house before listing it online. Father was hospitalized, unconscious, the very next day. That cramped 3-room apartment, despite being centrally located yet dilapidated, still fetched 2 million yuan. I was the actual buyer, and they had no idea. But when they lied to me, claiming it sold for just $1 million, I didn't call them out on it. Both my older brothers just returned to the country recently and are completely out of touch with the domestic situation. This is a new second-tier city, and I was actually the one who told my dad that his old property here is slated for demolition, so he didn't just call my brothers and their wives back because of the lottery. He could have just wired them the money, but Dad was more worried about the house ending up in my hands, his daughters. In this life, I kept that part to myself. My brothers and their wives were so fixated on the lottery, they couldn't care less about some rundown house. I didn't take a single cent of the remaining $4 million. My brothers were so moved they nearly dropped to their knees to thank me. It wasn't until a month later, on the very night Dad passed away, the demolition of the house had begun, with footage of the work being broadcast on television. Dad had only regained consciousness a few days earlier. Seeing the news, he was so overcome with anger that he couldn't catch his breath, and after a few convulsions, he was gone. When I went to see, my eldest and second brothers were on the ground, weeping bitterly. They weren't mourning their father, but themselves. Had they not sold out, they'd be instant millionaires from the demolition payout. I slowly approached my father, seeing his darkened face and wide-open eyes still blazing with anger. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Humming the tune, I gently closed his eyelids, gazing at the starry sky. I tugged at my father's sleeve with my tiny hands and begged in my sweetest childlike voice for him to sing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star for me. Dad claimed he didn't know the song, but I distinctly heard him singing it just yesterday. Son, those two brightest stars up there, they're you and your brother. My eldest and second brother were each nestled in his arms as he sang to them. What about our sister? Second brother looked at me tending the kitchen fire, his eyes filled with tenderness. If sister is the moon, then brothers are the stars watching over her. Eldest brother chimed in eagerly. Dad pointed to a distant star, faint and tiny. That's your sister, comma, the end. Story 2. My husband has been reborn. He secretly warned his mother and son that the apocalypse was imminent. Together, they kicked me out of the house and spent all the savings on hoarding supplies. However, only I knew that this time, the apocalypse wouldn't come. I have the ability to foresee the apocalypse, and this is my second rebirth. In my first life, I foresaw the approaching apocalypse and shared it with my husband, who dismissed it and mocked me along with his mother. They controlled the family finances, and as a powerless housewife, I was helpless and watched as the apocalypse unfolded. When the zombie outbreak occurred, my husband and mother-in-law pushed me into the horde to save themselves. In my second life, I didn't foresee the apocalypse, but I wasn't willing to gamble. This time, I didn't try to convince my husband and mother-in-law. Instead, I used my memories from my previous life to win a 200 million lottery. With that money, I bought supplies and weapons and hid away with my son. However, the apocalypse never came, and my son, who always despised me, revealed our hideout to my husband and mother-in-law. The three of them strangled me to death in a fight over the money. Now, in my third life, I finally realized that my ability to foresee the apocalypse is accurate. Fortunately, there will be no apocalypse this time. However, unlike the previous lives, my husband has also been reborn. On the third night of my rebirth, as I pondered how to break the cycle of continuous rebirth and, more importantly, how to escape these cold-hearted so-called family members, Sean, sleeping beside me, began to convulse and muttered, "Don't bite me, son, go bite your grandma." Sean suddenly woke up, sat up from the bed with a pale face, sweating profusely, and gasping for breath. I realized that Sean had been reborn from the first life. After sacrificing me, they indeed began to turn on each other. I pretended not to hear his dream talk and reached out to wipe his sweat. "What's wrong, honey? Did you have a nightmare?" Sean then turned his gaze towards me, his eyes filled with terror, and his voice trembling. He said, "Vivian, weren't you dead?" Feigning confusion and surprise, I responded, "What are you talking about? Dead? Aren't I right here?" Sean finally calmed down, glanced around at the environment we were in, and realized he had been reborn. His eyes lighting up with ecstasy, he grabbed my arm, his smile exaggerated. "Wife, listen to me." His voice suddenly stopped, the ecstatic expression froze on his face, his eyes flickered, and after a while, he continued, "It's nothing, just a nightmare. I dreamed you were dead." The complex emotions in Sean's eyes disappeared in an instant as he hugged me, resting his chin on my shoulder, and softly said, "Wife, I can't live without you. I'm so afraid of losing you." Out of Sean's sight, my face was filled with scorn and hatred. If I hadn't been reborn twice, I might have actually believed this man's sweet words, but now, I'm certain that he doesn't plan to tell me about the apocalypse. He wants to watch me die along with his mother and son. If that's the case, then they shouldn't blame me for retaliating. The next morning, Sean casually asked, "Didn't you say something about the apocalypse coming recently and urged us to buy supplies? Why haven't you mentioned it anymore?" I sneered inwardly. In my first life, I foresaw the apocalypse, but no one believed me. Sean was recalling my actions before the apocalypse erupted, testing to see if I had also been reborn. Of course, I couldn't let him know, so I casually laughed it off. "Oh, it was just a strange dream I had. It's funny to think about it now. How could I just believe in a dream? Luckily you guys stopped me from hoarding supplies, or I would have been at a loss." Sean chuckled as well. "Yeah, Mom and I thought you had gone mad. An apocalypse, really? You must have watched too many movies." I despised their ignorance internally but didn't show it. Instead, I spoke with slight confusion. "Speaking of which, that dream felt so real. I even dreamt about a friend of mine who lives on the ground floor of the Imperial residence. His house has a basement where he hid for a long time after the zombie outbreak. It was quite safe there." As soon as I finished speaking, Sean's hand paused slightly while holding his spoon. I continued to eat my porridge nonchalantly, muttering, "But a dream is just a dream. After all, it differs from reality. My friend has been complaining about the lack of sunlight on the lower floors and was actually planning to sell that apartment." Sure enough, Sean looked up at me. "Ahem, a friend of mine is actually looking to buy a house, and he likes the first floor. Could you give me your friend's contact information?" I sipped my porridge and Smiled. Sure, later, I went out for groceries as usual, but Sean didn't go to work and even asked for a day off for his son from school. In the living room, Sean looked serious. Mom, Lucas, I have something very important to tell you, and we mustn't let Vivian know about this. In 3 months, the apocalypse will erupt, and many people will turn into zombies. We need to prepare early. Carmen's eyes, clouded with age, widened immediately. She touched Sean's forehead and scoffed. Son, you sick? You're talking just like that woman Vivian, all nonsensical. Lucas rolled his eyes beside them, dismissing his father's words. Dad, I've told you to stop reading those silly apocalypse novels. Seeing that neither believed him, Sean anxiously insisted. It's true, Vivian droned of the apocalypse, but I have actually been reborn. Many people turned into zombies and ran amok, and in the end, you, my son, bit me to death. Sean's tone was gravely serious, and after hearing this, Carmen and Lucas exchanged glances. It took Sean a lot of effort to convince his mother and son about the reality of the situation. The three of them began planning how to survive and also discussed hurrying to divorce me. Do we really not care about Mom? Wouldn't more people mean more strength? Lucas still had a conscience, though he looked troubled. Carmen snorted sharply, her words full of scorn. Even without the apocalypse, I've wanted her gone for a long time. We three are the real family. She's an outsider. After giving birth to my grandson, she's been of no use and keeps spending my son's money. Sean patted Lucas on the head, his words heartfelt. Son, your grandma is right. In peaceful times, we could afford to keep her, but in an apocalypse, having one more person means splitting our supplies further. A woman would only be a burden. Lucas pouted, grumbling. Okay, I never liked Mom anyway. It's safer to stick with Dad during the apocalypse. At the computer, I watched the live surveillance feed without blinking. On the first day of my rebirth, I had installed micro cameras at home. Now, watching their true faces, my heart felt desolate and numb. This was my third life. In the previous two, I was killed by my own family. This time, even if Sean was reborn, these people still thought of abandoning me. Before, I had a slight hesitation and wanted to remind them not to buy that house, but now, even that bit of sentiment had completely vanished. A few days later, Sean brought up the topic of divorce, and I agreed without hesitation. On the day I left, Carmen was glowing as though she had won a great battle, her wrinkled face beaming with joy. You've finally gotten out of my son's house. I warn you, don't come back crying in a few months begging us for food. I won't even give you the scraps, she said. Lucas quickly tugged at Carmen's sleeve and whispered, Grandma, you're saying too much. I pretended to ignore all of this, my mind already recalling the lottery numbers I had bought in my second life. I silently packed my bags, struggling to keep from laughing out loud, forcing my curled lips to straighten. Just wait, it's not yet clear who will be begging whom. After leaving that home, I bought a lottery ticket from memory and, sure enough, I won again, a $200 million jackpot. With that money, I rented an apartment and saved the rest in a fixed deposit. Then, I just counted the days until Sean and his family would come knocking. Sure enough, once they heard I had won the lottery, they quickly came to my door. Vivian, you wretched woman, what kind of dumb luck is this? You spent so much of my son's money. You owe us at least half of that $200 million. Carmen yelled at me, her face contorted as she pointed at my nose. I couldn't help but smirk internally. When I married Sean, he was penniless, and it was with my support that he built his career, bought a house in City A, and even moved his mother in to live with us. After I had Lucas, I quit my job to become a full-time housewife. Unexpectedly, a few years later, this family began to despise me, thinking I was freeloading and verbally abusing me daily. Having been reborn multiple times, I had seen through them long ago. This lifetime, I was determined to watch them self-destruct from the sidelines. I ignored Carmen and turned to Sean. When we divorced, I didn't get much money, and the house and car went to you. This lottery win happened after our divorce. It has nothing to do with you. Sean took a deep breath, his expression softening, conflicted. Vivian, I won't lie to you. The person who wanted to buy your friend's house was me. We planned to move, but even selling the house and car isn't enough money. Even if you're unhappy with me and Mom, you should consider our son. Speaking of the son, it was because of him that I was strangled by Sean and Carmen in my second life. I looked at Lucas, who is now 12 and had been spoiled rotten by Carmen. I'll give you one more chance. Do you want to stay with your dad or with me? If you come with me, this money will be your inheritance. If you stay with your dad, I'll only provide the legal child support. Lucas's expression changed dramatically, his face almost the color of liver, and finally, he gritted his teeth, glared at me, and said, I'll stay with my dad. I hate you, you money-obsessed woman. Grandma is right. You're not part of our family. You're just a vile woman. His words did not surprise me. After all, I had experienced this In my previous lives, I had given him too many chances and fulfilled my duty as a mother. Well, there's nothing more to say then. Please leave. As I was about to close the door, Sean held it open, his expression complex, with a hint of schadenfreude. Vivian, don't say I didn't warn you. Maybe money will become worthless soon, and other things will become valuable. By then, your 2 billion might just be a pile of useless paper. With an expression of utter disbelief, I said laughingly, then. Why come to me? Go to a lending company. Since money is worthless, no one is going to ask you to pay it back, right? Without waiting for Sean to respond, I closed the door with a bang and breathed a sigh of relief. Sean had survived the apocalypse of his first life, a time when the world was in chaos and everyone was fighting for their survival. Debts were the last thing on anyone's mind as supplies were more valuable than money, with people spending thousands just for a bucket of instant noodles. Thus, he was determined to spend all his savings, even maxing out his credit cards and taking out high-interest loans to buy that very safe house, after which he spent a fortune stockpiling supplies and weapons. However, he hadn't experienced the second life where there were no zombies, but an extraordinary downpour occurred instead. That heavy rain flooded the neighborhood where my friend lived, causing property prices to plummet. My friend regretted not selling the house earlier. Facing a devastating loss in this life, according to my foresight, there wouldn't be an apocalypse, but the heavy rain would still come. Once Sean spent all his money and took on huge debts to stockpile supplies and weapons in the basement of that house, everything would be lost when the storm hit. I was really looking forward to seeing their faces when they realized the apocalypse didn't come. 2 months later, as expected, the torrential rain arrived. Thunderous rain poured for 3 days and nights. I was nestled on the couch, enjoying hot pot and browsing the news. A pop-up on my phone read, City A encounters a century-rare torrential rain, many areas flooded, with Imperial Estate being the worst affected, waters rising to the second floor, and Sp 5. The third day of the rain was the anniversary of the apocalypse of the first life, and now it was the fourth day. I woke up from a nightmare where I dreamed of my tragic deaths in the previous 2 lives. Fortunately, the rain had stopped. The sky was clear, there were no disasters or zombies, and people were gradually returning to work. Some went out to the streets to give thanks to nature and enjoy the sunshine. My premonition had come true again. The apocalypse hadn't arrived, and I felt immensely grateful. All I needed to do now was to avoid persecution from Sean's family, and I could live peacefully and happily. My phone had dozens of missed calls. I called back, eager to know about the dire situation of this family. Vivian, you finally answered. Did you conspire with your friend to trick me into buying this house? Sean was livid on the other line, his voice hoarse. We just bought the house, and it got flooded. We stockpiled so much food and drink in the basement, all soaked. Do you know we almost drowned? On the phone, the man kept telling me how miserable the 3 of them were. The more miserable Sean's family was, the happier I felt. Finally avenging my past lives, I had to see this gratifying scene for myself. Without waiting for Sean to ramble on, I hung up and hired several burly bodyguards to accompany me to Imperial Estate. Upon arriving at Imperial Estate, what I saw was a scene of devastation. The floodwaters had receded, but the ground was covered in mud, cars were overturned, trees had fallen across the ground, and the windows below the 3rd floor of the buildings were shattered, with large sections of wall peeling off. Amidst the chaos and noise, I saw Sean and his family in a sorry state. Sean and his son were covered in mud, looking disheveled as they were moving some supplies out. Not far away, Carmen, with her hair disheveled, sat on the ground crying bitterly, drawing frequent glances from passers-by. Oh my God, what bad luck. Just moved into a new house and then a flood. The basement's completely flooded, all our grains and food soaked and ruined. Carmen, overwhelmed, lay down in the mud, kicking and screaming, causing passers-by to steer clear. Standing alongside several towering bodyguards quickly drew the attention of a few onlookers. As soon as Carmen spotted me, her eyes flashed menacingly. She struggled to her feet and lunged at me, only to be stopped by a bodyguard next to me. An elderly woman, heedless of others, charged forward, pointing at my nose with claw-like fingers. Vivian, you disaster. Look what you've done to our family. It was you who persuaded my son to buy this house. Now you live the life of the rich. Well, I bet you and your friend are nothing but deceitful lovers. Sean and Lucas, alerted by the commotion, hurried over. Sean's face was grim, perhaps embarrassed by the growing crowd of onlookers. He hissed at Carmen in a lowered voice, Mom, shut up. But Carmen, already on the brink of madness, slapped Sean across the face. The crisp sound of the slap quieted the murmuring bystanders. The elderly woman's eyes bulged as she grabbed Sean by the ear and berated him. I'm your mother. How dare you protect this outsider over me? It was because you believed her lies that you bought this house. And now all our life savings are gone. Sean, his face a mix of endurance and impatience, finally managed to control Carmen. He asked Lucas to calm down their grandmother while he approached me. I cautiously had the bodyguards block him, convinced from past experiences that this man was capable of even more despicable acts. Sean glanced at the bodyguard, clenched his teeth, and said through clenched teeth, Vivian, I have a secret to tell you. I was reborn. In my past life, the apocalypse broke out, and you were bitten by zombies while trying to protect Lucas. After being reborn, I didn't want my family's burdens to drag you down, which is why I divorced you. A sardonic smile appeared on my face. In our first life, we had to venture out for supplies to survive. However, Carmen stepped on a corpse and couldn't help screaming, attracting a horde of zombies. To buy time, Sean and Carmen pushed me towards the zombies. The zombies' roars and chewing noises approached as those monsters, with their foul breath and sharp teeth, pinned me to the ground and tore me apart. I struggled and screamed hoarsely for help from my husband and mother-in-law, but they didn't look back, leaving me to be disemboweled, my intestines and organs spilling out. That horrifying scene forced me to shut my eyes and take deep breaths, repeatedly reminding myself that I was still alive. Opening my eyes, I feigned calmness and managed to smile. So, why are you telling me all this, seeing that I didn't dismiss his story? Sean's tone took on a hint of surprise as he spoke more urgently. Vivian, you've seen our house. There's nowhere to hide if the apocalypse breaks out. We'll surely die. Now that you've won the lottery, there's still time to stock up on supplies and weapons. If our family sticks together, we can survive. I couldn't help but bend over laughing, tears streaming down my face. I wiped the corners of my eyes and announced loudly to the onlookers, "Did you hear that? My ex-husband says the apocalypse is coming and there will be zombies eating people." The crowd, obviously unable to contain themselves at this revelation, looked at Sean with peculiar glances. Even my bodyguards struggled to hold back their laughter. To ordinary people, it was just an unusual heavy rain. Believing in an apocalypse would only make one seem insane. Eyes of varying expressions turned towards us, making Sean visibly uncomfortable as his assured demeanor shifted to embarrassment. He angrily retorted, "Vivian, I was trying to be kind by telling you. If you don't believe it, fine, but to mock me in front of others, how could you become so unreasonable?" A surge of anger rose within me. Had I been too timid and submissive in this family before? Now that I refused to be bullied, was I being unreasonable? Before I could respond, a figure rushed forward. Carmen, tugging and scratching at Sean's clothes while cursing incessantly. "Didn't you say the apocalypse was supposed to come yesterday? Keep dreaming. All this nonsense about apocalypses, zombies, and rebirth. I think you're possessed. Our family has been ruined." The mother and son were fighting fiercely, and Lucas, standing by, was crying uncontrollably. "Woo, Dad, Grandma, stop fighting. We haven't moved everything from the basement yet. If it keeps soaking, nothing will be usable." Lucas, wiping away tears and sobbing, occasionally stole glances at me. After crying for a while and seeing no response from me, he spoke with a flushed, stuttering voice. "Mom, please come back. Can't you and Dad get back together?" Looking at the child I bore after 10 months of pregnancy, for whom I gave up my career and became a housewife, I realized that not only does my son lack any gratitude, he even joins his grandmother in humiliating me. In my second life, I could no longer trust Sean and Carmen, but I couldn't just abandon my child. I had to take him with me, no matter what. Fortunately, the apocalypse didn't happen. Although I had stockpiled quite a bit of supplies, they were nothing compared to a 200 million lottery ticket, especially since the supplies were intact and could be resold. But what I never expected was that this child, whom I raised with all my love and care, would become a dagger aimed at my heart. When Sean and Carmen strangled me, Lucas just stood nearby, watching indifferently. I wanted to call his name, but my constricted throat made it impossible to speak, and I was overwhelmed by the sensation of suffocation. God gave me 2 chances to see these so-called family members for the devils they really are. In my past lives, I devoted myself to my family, exhausting myself trying to save them, only to be betrayed and meet a tragic end. This time, I won't be soft-hearted towards anyone. I'm tired of this drama. Calling my bodyguard, I prepared to leave. Seeing me about to go, Sean hurriedly pushed Carmen to the ground. The old woman immediately lay down, crying and making a scene. Sean, his face scratched up by his own mother, stepped forward, gasping, "Other people might not believe it, but didn't you have dreams about the apocalypse? It's just delayed, but it will come. Are you sure you don't want to stay with us? You're a single woman without a man's protection. Zombies will devour you on the first day of the outbreak." I couldn't believe how shameless Sean could be. Did he forget how he fed me to the zombies in our past life? How could he not feel ashamed? Furious, I laughed mockingly, squinting to see clearly the man in front of me, but all I saw was a beast with fangs ready to tear me apart. With all my strength, I made sure everyone could hear me. "Sean, during the years we were married, I supported your career and took care of your family. You threw me out of the house, and now that I have money, you concoct this absurd end-of-the-world story to scam me into paying off your family's debts." Hearing my accusation, the onlookers, initially just watching the drama, began to voice their support for me. I continued to incite the crowd. If you really were reborn knowing the apocalypse is coming, and your family secretly hoarded supplies without telling anyone, are you planning to indulge yourselves while others die? How can you be so selfish? Most of the onlookers were residents of the Imperial Mansion community, already in a bad mood from the disaster. Hearing this, they began to curse loudly, and some even rushed forward to hit Sean, turning the scene into chaos. I took the opportunity to leave under the protection of my bodyguard. With Sean's furious shouts behind me, the apocalypse will definitely come. Since God let me be reborn, I must be the protagonist of this world. Wait and see, anyone who opposes me will die. I couldn't help but look back, and on Sean's face, I saw madness burning fiercely. In the following months, I bought a house in another city and started a new life, but to stay alert, I kept an eye on Sean and his family's movements, with no money to repair their flood-damaged house and debt collectors constantly harassing them. The three could only pitifully hide in the basement. Their only source of money was the child support I sent to Lucas, yet Sean still stubbornly claimed the apocalypse was just delayed and continued trying to borrow money to stockpile supplies, leading to almost daily fights with Carmen. As time passed, Sean's mental state became increasingly unstable. He would often mock the neighbors in his community, saying they would all be bitten by zombies. The residents of the Imperial Mansion complex believed his family was insane and avoided them as much as possible. Half a year later, the police came to notify me that Lucas was dead, murdered by his father, Sean. It was Carmen who reported the crime. According to her, Sean had become maniacal in his efforts to procure supplies, attempting to seize Lucas's child support money. When Lucas refused, he was beaten to death by his own father. Sean fled and has been missing ever since. The police informed me that Sean was mentally disturbed. From talking to the residents, they learned that he would pray for the apocalypse and often verbally abuse his ex-wife, so they came to warn me that this madman might come to harm me. I recalled the suffocating feeling of being choked in a past life. I didn't want to repeat that experience, so I hired a top-level security team to protect me. It had been a long time since the police's visit, and Sean had yet to appear, but I remained vigilant, maintaining my security measures. One day, as I parked in the underground garage, a tall, thin figure suddenly sprang from the darkness and slammed into my windshield. The figure rolled several times, seemingly impervious to pain, and charged at me again, frantically smashing my car window with a steel pipe. A ferocious face appeared, clearly visible and terrifying. It was Sean, who had been on the run for a long time. Sean's hair had grown to his shoulders, his clothes were tattered, and the hand holding the pipe was veiny, his long nails filled with black dirt, his face dirty and unkempt, his beard ragged, his eyes nearly bulging out of their sockets with a fierce glare. He kept roaring, "I'm going to kill you." For some reason, seeing him like this made me momentarily think the apocalypse had erupted again, and Sean had turned into a nimble zombie, rushing to tear me apart. This thought dazed me, and I lost the ability to respond to Sean's fierce attack. The moment the car window shattered, Sean reached in to grab my face, his dry, twig-like fingers enlarging in my view, reminiscent of the first zombie that had pounced on me in a past life. But this time, he stopped. He didn't tear off my facial skin, gouge out my eyes, or rip out my heart. The security team reacted quickly. They had also arranged patrols in the underground garage, and hearing the commotion, they swiftly came to my aid. Several men in black pinned Sean to the ground. He continued to twist his body, his eyes fixed on me with immense hatred. My consciousness returned to reality, and I stepped out of the car feeling unsteady. Only when my feet touched the ground did I truly feel the reality of the world. It felt as though I had been reborn once again. "It's all because of you, Vivian," Sean's roaring echoed in the empty garage, and it wasn't until he spoke that one could truly realize this was a human being. The man continued to struggle, his long nails scratching the ground, breaking off. "What did you do? What went wrong? Why did you have that dream? Why did you make me buy that house? Why doesn't the apocalypse come? I'm supposed to be the protagonist in this life. Not only should I survive, but I should also develop special abilities and form my own team to lead humanity." A security guard kneeling on his neck couldn't help but laugh out loud, a sound that, in the quiet environment, was especially clear to Sean's ears. It was excruciatingly grating. He stiffened his neck, gritting his teeth so hard that blood even began to seep from the corners of his mouth. Incoherently, words burst forth from between his clenched teeth. "Even you, a bodyguard, dare to laugh at the protagonist." Caught off guard, Sean bit into the bodyguard's thigh, tearing off a piece of flesh. The bodyguard's screams echoed throughout the garage, almost drowning out the approaching police sirens. Sean was detained and placed in a police car, and the injured bodyguard was taken to the hospital. A police officer, having finished processing the scene, leaned against my car to rest. He lit a cigarette and slowly exhaled a puff of smoke, sighing, "It's incredible how some people eagerly await the end of the world every day." I kept my head down, not speaking. Sean did all that to survive longer in the apocalypse and, if it never came, to live a peaceful life until his natural death, but he had invested everything into that house. And his dreams of being a hero were washed away into the sewers by a torrential rain. For him, the present world was the real apocalypse. Sean was diagnosed with a mental illness, and his lawyer fought hard to save him from the death penalty. In the end, Sean was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. I was finally safe, no longer doomed to repeat a fate of death. After a few days of peace, Sean had his lawyer tell me he wanted to see me in prison. Sean and I sat face to face, separated by glass. The man, now bald, clean-shaven, and with trimmed nails, looked surprisingly well in his prison uniform. He looked at me calmly, his voice steady. Everyone thinks I'm mad, but I know I'm not. I clearly remember how I survived a disaster and came back to life. This is not a dream. The apocalypse will come. I smiled, not contradicting him, and softly said, well, congratulations then. When that time comes, prison might be the safest place. Sean also smiled. At that moment, we seemed like two close friends sharing secrets, completely unlike just a few months ago when we were at each other's throats. Do you know why I killed our son? It wasn't for money, it's because I was killed by him in my past life. Since that was the case, I thought it better to act first and eliminate the threat. That's human nature. No one has the right to call me selfish. Hearing my ex-husband explain why he killed our son, I felt neither sadness nor anger. It was almost expected. I sighed. I used to think the apocalypse was terrifying, and zombies were frightening, but I later realized that people's hearts are more terrifying than zombies. I understand this because I've paid with my life. Twice, Sean's calm facade instantly shattered. He became frantic and agitated, pacing back and forth, muttering, I knew it. I knew you were reborn too. He suddenly froze, his eyes mechanically shifting, his tone incredulous. What do you mean? Lost your life twice? Vivian, explain this to me. I ignored Sean's hysteria, stood up, and left. This would be our last meeting. Years later, I heard that Sean often spread rumors of the apocalypse in prison, claiming he was a reborn protagonist. As a result, he was disliked by his fellow inmates and often beaten. Eventually, another inmate with a mental disorder fatally bit his throat, and he bled to death. But all that had nothing to do with me anymore. My life now was very fulfilling. On a trip back to City A to handle some matters, I ran into Carmen. She was still living in that basement, and since her creditors knew she couldn't pay, they gradually stopped harassing her. When I saw her rummaging through the neighborhood trash bins, bent over, her hair white, she didn't seem to recognize me. She just held out a broken bowl towards me, and when I didn't respond, she spat fiercely on the ground. Pa, beggar. Watching Carmen's staggering figure, I thought about my 3 lives. Only in this one was I truly alive. The apocalypse never came, but some people turned into ghastly, zombie-like creatures, feeding on human flesh and draining energy and spirit. When unable to find human prey, they wandered the edges of the world like the living dead. For them, such a world was no different from the apocalypse. Story 2. I can see everyone's lifespan. One day, I suddenly found that the numbers above the heads of all my colleagues had changed to 10 seconds. The 987 doomsday is coming. A minute ago, the number above the head of the worker next to me suddenly started jumping crazily and then froze at 5 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds. I slapped myself. It hurt a bit. Ouch. This isn't a dream, nor is it my eyes playing tricks on me. I trembled as I took out a mirror and looked at the number above my head. Fuck. Remaining lifespan, 5 hours, 59 minutes, and 58 seconds. I lied to the workshop director, saying I needed to use the restroom, and then ran like crazy back to the staff dormitory. Everyone I met on the way had a lifespan of basically less than a day. Most of them were about the same as me, and the ones with a slightly longer lifespan only had 18 hours. After arriving at the dormitory, I splashed some cold water on my face, forcing myself to calm down. I can't panic. I've only been discharged from the military for 2 years. If my squad leader saw me like this, he'd surely give me a good scolding. Moreover, there are more than 1,000 lives in this paper mill, and behind each of them are more than 1,000 families. A revolutionary soldier remains true to their mission even after leaving the military. Damn it, I have to save them, but if I suddenly run out and tell them that no one will live past tomorrow, I'll most likely be taken as a lunatic and locked up. Whatever, I'll do what I can and leave the rest to fate, too. I hurriedly packed my luggage and put on the camouflage uniform and combat boots that I had kept at the bottom of my trunk. I stroked the whitened scratches on the boots and sighed. Old buddy, long time no see, we're going to fight side by side again. Looking down at the mirror, I saw that there were only 5.5 hours left. My parents went to Maine for a trip the day before yesterday. It's almost impossible for large-scale natural disasters to occur there, and the safety level is 5-star. Thinking of this, I felt a bit of relief in my heart. After some hesitation, I opened my phone. First, I sent a message to my friends who owed me money, saying, "You don't need to pay me back." Then I sent a message to the girl I had a crush on, saying, "I like you." Finally, I sent a series of Beautiful Chinese greetings to the workshop director who had been tormenting me and deducting my wages every day, wishing his whole family well. I still wasn't satisfied. I'd punch him if I got the chance later. Just thinking about it made me feel good. There were no more regrets in my life. As for my parents, forget it. I don't want to worry them. I'll tell them if I can survive until tomorrow. I opened Trip and grabbed a flight ticket to Maine in the evening. Finally, I used all the money I had left to order various medical supplies through Uber Eats' errand-running service. Feeling a bit agitated, I lit a cigarette. The biggest problem in front of me now is how to make more than 1,000 workers in the factory believe me. 3. The sudden ringing of my phone pulled me back to reality. I clicked to see that it was a video call from my dad. After answering the call, I widened my eyes in shock, and the cigarette in my hand fell to the ground. Yo, my dear son, you're not busy right now. Your mom and I are looking at yaks. My parents on the screen were smiling happily, but the numbers above their heads were even 2 minutes less than mine. 5 hours, 23 minutes, and 47 seconds. I forced a smile and told my parents that I had something urgent and would call them back in 5 minutes. Bang, I punched the wall hard, filled with anger inside. I'm not willing to accept this. Why, even Maine isn't safe. What the hell is going on? What on earth is going to happen? Is a comet going to hit the Earth? What a crazy joke. Wait, could it be? A worst-case scenario flashed through my mind. I tremblingly took out my phone and browsed through the live streaming rooms on various live streaming platforms. The longest lifespan I saw was less than a year, and most people only had a little over 5 hours left. Even the live streamers traveling abroad were no exception, regardless of race or region. The end of the world is coming. I copied down the detailed information of those live streamers with relatively longer lifespans on paper, trying to find something in common among them. Region, ruled out age, ruled out gender. It seemed that adult men had a slight advantage. Could the ultimate answer to surviving the disaster be gender? No. It might also be physical fitness, strength, or stamina. The image of a live streamer named Hedgehog flashed through my mind. He worked as a mercenary abroad, and his physical fitness was definitely top-notch among ordinary people. I quickly clicked into his live streaming room, and the scene made my pupils contract. Among the dozen or so mercenaries in the picture, most of them had normal lifespans. The most astonishing thing was that Hedgehog, who was holding a rifle and shooting at beer bottles, actually had 68 years left. It's the end of the world. Why the hell does he get to live a long life? So what if he's holding an AK-47? I got it. Weapons. It's about firepower and weapons. I carefully checked the locations of the other live streamers with longer lifespans. Sure enough, in most of the cities with heavy military deployments, there were more people with longer lifespans among the live streamers. 5. I suddenly stood up, gritting my teeth. Damn it, could it be a zombie apocalypse or an alien invasion of the Earth? But there are no troops near the factory. This must be the main reason why the workers don't have much lifespan left. After figuring this out, I quickly picked up my phone and called my parents, telling them to find the nearby troops immediately and stay there for at least 6 hours, or I'd kill myself. Phew, I let out a long breath, and a weight lifted off my heart. There were no more worries, but now I'm just an ordinary paper maker. Where can I get guns and ammunition? If there's really no other way, I'll have to make do with cold weapons for now. I excitedly ran to the kitchen and grabbed a kitchen knife. Looking at the number above my head reflected in the window, it actually increased by 2 seconds. I couldn't help but fall into deep thought. I spent another 5 minutes sharpening the blade, and the time increased by another 1 minute. I lost 4 minutes on this, but in a chaotic world, one person's strength is too small to change anything. I need to unite all the forces that can be united to have a chance of survival. 6. I ran back to the workshop with the kitchen knife in hand and turned off the assembly line switch under everyone's shocked gazes. What the hell? Let's talk this out. Put the knife down. Shut up. The workshop director was intimidated by my fierce gaze and cowered, not daring to say anything more. Hugo, is there some trouble at home? Tell me, and we'll all think of a way to help. The workers tried to persuade me one after another, telling me not to be impulsive. I was a bit touched, wiped the sweat off my face, and shouted loudly, "Everyone, listen to me. I'm not crazy. You all know what kind of person I am." Just now, my comrade in arms from the military called and told me that in 5 hours, a large number of enemies will appear around our factory. The troops have to deal with more ferocious enemies and can't come to protect us. If we want to survive, we can only rely on ourselves. The crowd started to stir. Some were half believing, while others looked at me like I was a lunatic. Why should we believe you? Do you know how much money the factory will lose if we stop work for a day? The stupid director started shouting again. I gritted my teeth. It seemed I could only use the most brutal Method, taking him by surprise, I lunged forward and put the knife to his neck. Take me to see the factory manager, or I'll kill you. Okay, don't be impulsive. My dad is the factory manager. How much money do you want? 7-10 minutes later, the factory's broadcast sounded, everyone, stop work immediately and gather in the square in front of the warehouse. Repeat. Stop work immediately and come out to gather. The factory manager gently pushed the blade on his neck and swallowed hard. Young man, are you satisfied now? You have a bright future ahead. Don't ruin it. Cut the crap. You'll follow my orders in the next 5 hours, or don't blame me if my hand slips. The factory manager patted his chest and said he'd listen to me. He even asked if he could break the legs of his useless son, the workshop director, and he'd pay extra. It was getting dark. Looking at the time above the director's head, there were only 4 hours left. I tied up the stupid director's hands and feet, threw him on the sofa, and locked the door. I seem to have forgotten to punch him. Bang, I punched the guy in the face, and his nosebleed almost splashed on me. Don't hit him, you lunatic. I'll do everything you say. Don't hurt my son. The factory manager was frightened by my punch. Forget it. I didn't bother to explain. Guys like the director, who bullied the weak, got several female workers pregnant, and liked to pick on honest people, were lucky to have survived until now without being beaten to death. Turn on the broadcast, repeat after me, or else. Okay, you say it. After the factory manager announced that there was a special emergency drill going on, and that no one's salary would be deducted today, and everyone would get an 8-fold wage subsidy, the whole factory erupted in excitement. People over 60, women, and children, step out. You all move all the drinking water and food into the underground warehouse. Each of you will get 100 yuan. Looking around, only a large number of young and middle-aged men were left in the square. I roughly divided the people into 4 groups, with more than 100 people in each group. Tom, Laurel, Hunter, Ian, from now on, you're the company commanders of the 1st to 4th companies. There was a burst of laughter downstairs. Ahem, be serious. This is a drill, everyone. Take it seriously. The workers said they'd definitely follow the orders and abide by the rules. Anyway, they could earn money, so they'd surely satisfy the factory manager, the finance department, buy all the food, water, alcohol, and paint thinner you can find nearby. If there's not enough money, buy on credit. The factory will reimburse you. The first company is responsible for shaving all the bamboo in warehouse 1 into bamboo poles. The number should be more than 1000. The second company, cut all the paper rolling knives into 1-meter long pieces. Use a grinding machine to create double edges, and stuff the tails into one end of the bamboo poles, tie them firmly with cloth strips. The third company, pour out all the beer in the glass bottles, fill them halfway with paint thinner or high-proof liquor, stuff the bottle mouths with cloth balls, and leave a 20-centimeter long cloth strip outside. The fourth company, buy 2,000 urea bags, fill them with the sand pile at the factory gate, and pile them in front of the underground warehouse door to form 3 1-meter high, 2-meter wide, and 10-meter long low walls. Whichever company finishes first will get an extra 3 days' wages. Watching the crowd disperse, I couldn't help but sigh. Money can't solve all problems, but the power of money is really useful. 8 passed minute by minute. The factory was brightly lit, and the workers were working with great enthusiasm. I looked up at the director. He still had 3 hours and 15 minutes of lifespan left. Dee woo-woo. Suddenly, a sharp police siren sounded downstairs. Damn it, I wonder which bastard called the police. 9 times out of 10, it was those lackeys of the director. Looking down, there were 3 police cars. The lifespans of a small number of workers actually increased. More than a dozen people's lifespans increased from 6 hours to more than 10 days, and several even increased to several years. The workers looked at the police cars in confusion, and most of them stopped what they were doing. People in the factory manager's room on the 3rd floor. What are your conditions? Let's talk it out. Don't hurt the civilians. You also have parents and relatives. The police team started shouting. I originally wanted to stall them, but the workers stopped working. I was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan to prevent the police from shooting me. I motioned for the factory manager to stand by the window to block their view. I won't harm the hostage within 3 hours. Don't push me either. I have 2 conditions. Workers can't stop working and must do as I say, and there are too few of you here. You have 3 hours to bring all the people and equipment from your station, or I'll kill the hostage. The police officers were probably encountering this situation for the first time. There was actually a criminal who thought there were too few police. The atmosphere became a bit strange for a moment. We promise to meet your requirements. Don't be impulsive. We'll cooperate with you, and please cooperate with us too. 9 an hour later. 3 more police cars rushed to the downstairs with their sirens blaring. I could see that the lifespans of most of the police Officers who entered the factory were decreasing rapidly. In stark contrast, the lifespans of more than 100 workers increased from 5 or 6 hours to several months, or even several years. I felt very complicated inside. I was the one who called them here to die. Those police officers could have lived longer. I'm sorry to their families. The Buddhist saying suddenly came to my mind. All the sins and retributions shall be borne by me. If I'm lucky enough to survive, I'm willing to accept any judgment. The police started shouting at me again, but I ignored them. I just forced the factory manager to shout help every 100 minutes. 10 times slipped by in silence, and the workers were still working. As each company completed their tasks one after another, I suddenly found that my lifespan had actually extended to 1 month. The factory manager's was even more astonishing, directly extending to 5 years. When the disaster comes, so many people in the factory can't die at the same time, so I had to use the few people with the shortest lifespans as the basis for judgment. The director, that unlucky guy, only had 10 minutes of lifespan left. I knew I couldn't wait any longer. Tell everyone to take the bamboo spears they made and hide in the underground warehouse. Take the Molotov cocktails too. The first company, stand behind the sandbag fortresses. Hurry up, or I'll kill the hostage. Okay, don't be impulsive. Are you hungry? We've prepared food for you and the hostage. Can you eat something first and then we can talk? Alas, although I was really hungry, have you ever seen a criminal daring to eat the food given by the police with a hostage? I really didn't believe there was nothing wrong with it. You guys have worked hard. You eat. I'm not hungry. There was no response from below. They were probably confused by my "you guys have worked hard." The atmosphere became strange and awkward again. 11 under the lights. The crowd started bustling towards the warehouse. The moment they picked up their weapons and entered the warehouse, I saw the scarlet numbers above their heads jumping, flickering, and increasing. 1/3 of the people's lifespans extended to more than 24 hours. The closer I got to the truth, the calmer my heart became. I've done everything I could. The rest is up to you, my dear workers. No matter what the outcome is, I'm ready. I took out the last cigarette from my pocket, lit it, and took a deep puff. Why is there so much smoke in the room? Is this cigarette that strong? Fuck, smoke bombs and tear gas bombs. Damn it, you guys are not playing fair. Police officers, you're actually launching a sneak attack. The three of us in the room were choked so much that we couldn't open our eyes, and our noses and eyes were running. Bang, the door was broken open, and more than a dozen police officers wearing gas masks and armed with real guns rushed in. I was pinned to the ground like a dead fish, unable to move. I never thought I'd experience being handcuffed in my lifetime. I smiled self-deprecatingly. Forget it. I'm tired. Let it all end. 3 minutes later, I was sitting in the police car with handcuffs on. 3 capable-looking police officers in the car were looking at me unfriendly. The air began to ripple, and groups of rats scurried around the square. My whole body's hair stood on end, and my heart rate accelerated. They're coming. What? Who's coming? The young police officer sitting on my right looked completely confused. They're coming. That sense of unease grew stronger and stronger. Goosebumps formed all over my body, and my legs trembled like a sieve. Involuntarily, I started shaking. It was as if a voice exploded in my mind. Danger. Leave. Suddenly, I seemed to realize something. I looked up. In the ink-stained night sky, the moon took on a strange red tint. Everyone couldn't help but look up at the sky. I squinted my eyes and stared fixedly at the moon. The scarlet moonlight quickly spread across the night sky, like a mesmerizing blood-colored wedding veil unfurling over the world. The air undulated visibly, and the intense distortion made me feel like vomiting. Beside the red moon, a scene gradually became clear. 2 clusters of densely packed small black dots intertwined, covering the sky like a swarm of locusts, tangling with each other. Patted, it seemed like raindrops were falling on the car roof. Making a soft sound, thud, something relatively heavy hit the car roof. I turned my head to look. The car roof was dented, caving in a few centimeters. The police officer in the driver's seat angrily opened the door, cursing as he prepared to get out and check. 12. Bang, half of the windshield was smashed to pieces. Countless glass shards adhered to the anti-crack film like a spider web. The police officer in the passenger seat was unlucky. His head was directly caved in on one side, and it was clear that he was breathing his last. A dark object rolled in front of me. The interior light of the car zizzed and flickered. We finally saw clearly that it was a shriveled human head. On the black-red cheeks, layers of rotting muscle fibers were visible. Worms wriggled out of the left eye socket of the human head, some crawling towards the nostrils, some into the ears, others curled up and fell onto the car. The most terrifying thing was that the mouth of the head was moving. Poochie, a worm was bitten and burst by the yellowed and rotten teeth, and white liquid splashed all over me. Everyone in the car scrambled out in a panic. Because my hands were handcuffed, I lost my balance and fell to the ground. Thud, thud, thud. The sound of countless heavy objects falling resounded through the sky. I just got up when I saw the number above the head of the police officer on the right front jump from 3 seconds to 1 second. Get out of the way, quick, get out of the way, I shouted at him. Bang, half a corpse smashed hard on his head, and red white brains splattered all over the ground. I couldn't care about anything else. I ran like crazy, following the chaotic crowd and rushing into the underground warehouse. 13. After closing the rolling door, the huge underground warehouse was filled with a sea of people. Everywhere there were women's screams and children's ear-piercing cries. Under the pale incandescent lights, some people were shouting loudly for their relatives, looking around for them. Some people were as pale as paper, stunned and motionless, as if they had lost their souls. I shivered as I took out a lighter. I fumbled around my body but couldn't find a cigarette. The dull rumbling was still going on. Outside, the rain of corpses was still falling. Even though I had gone through strict military training, I was now a bit at a loss. Bodies falling from the sky. What's even more ridiculous is that the rotten head could actually move. What kind of crazy person could come up with such a scene? But everything happening in front of me forced me to accept this reality. You're crazy. Why are you biting me? A commotion in the distance interrupted my thoughts. One worker was grimacing in pain, holding his forearm. Another worker was being held down on the ground, struggling like he was having a seizure. I took a closer look. A chill shot straight to the top of my head. The number above the head of the bitten worker was jumping rapidly. In just a few seconds, it went from 5 months to 3 minutes. The person being held down on the ground, screaming and struggling. The number above his head is 0. 14. What are you doing? Let go of my husband. A disheveled young woman rushed over like crazy, punching and kicking the 2 workers who were holding the man on the ground. Where are the police? The police are dead. People are being beaten here. Why are you bullying my husband? Get away. Let go of him. The scene was in chaos. Suddenly, the crazy woman bit one of the workers' ears. The worker pushed the crazy woman away, covering his ear with a pained expression. Crimson blood gushed out from between his fingers, quickly soaking his clothes. The other person also quickly let go and backed away, seemingly frightened by the crazy woman. The man who had been struggling violently just now suddenly stopped moving. He lay stiffly on the ground, making a series of hee sounds. Don't go over. Your husband is already dead. I finally couldn't hold back and rushed over to grab the crazy woman's hand. 15. Slap. A clear slap sounded, and a burning pain spread across my left cheek. Your husband is the one who's dead. Your whole family is dead. If you dare to curse my husband again, I'll tear your mouth apart. I was stunned, watching her throw herself on the man, crying and laughing, as if checking if he was hurt. This couldn't go on like this. I was handcuffed, and I didn't have a weapon in my hand. I couldn't command the crowd at all. I suppressed the anger in my heart and looked around, trying to find some surviving police officers to maintain order. Glancing over the crowd, I shivered violently, feeling as if I had fallen into an ice cellar. At least dozens of workers had less than 3 minutes left on their heads, the same as the bitten worker. Remembering the moving human head in the car, I was struck like by lightning. So, what had fallen just now wasn't a rain of corpses, but a rain of zombies, and dozens of people with only 3 minutes of lifespan left had all been infected. 16. At some point, the impact sound from the ground disappeared. In 3 minutes, if I did nothing, everyone in the warehouse would have only 2 fates, being eaten, or eating others, and those dozens of infected people still looked normal for now. But to save everyone's lives, I could only choose to kill them. My left cheek, which had been slapped, was still. I couldn't imagine how I would face the crazy and enraged crowd if I killed those dozens of normal people. Looking around, the crazy woman was still holding her husband obsessively. A young mother was secretly hiding aside, breastfeeding her crying baby. A little boy, only 5 or 6 years old, seemed to have cried himself out. He was curled up in the corner, hugging his knees. The number above his head was also less than 3 minutes. I tore at my hair, falling into endless pain and despair. Fuck, if there really is an afterlife, I'll never be a hero again. Thinking of the guns on those police officers, I gritted my teeth and crawled out from under the rolling door. 17. The rain of corpses was almost over. Looking around, there were broken limbs and everywhere. Dark-colored bloodstains covered the ground and walls. The fences around the factory were surprisingly sturdy, just like the skewers I used to love to eat, with one or half a corpse stuck on the sharp tips. Thinking of this, I suddenly felt a bit nauseous. If I could survive this time, I probably wouldn't eat kebabs for the rest of my life. Faint sizzy sounds were coming from all around, making me a bit annoyed. I took a deep breath, turned on the high-beam flashlight, and ran towards the police car I had been in before. I couldn't care about anything else. When I reached the car, the roof was deformed by a corpse. I used all my strength but couldn't pull the door open. Suddenly, there were some footsteps and noises nearby. I frowned and turned around. A stench hit my face. A half-collapsed zombie head appeared in front of me. It opened its mouth, and the half-exposed fleshy gums made a click-click sound as It tried to bite. I was so startled that all the hair on my body stood up. I kicked the zombie in front of me and, somehow, with a great burst of strength, managed to pull the door open. I scrambled into the passenger seat, plopping down on the police officer's corpse, and quickly locked the door. The recovery ability of the zombies was beyond my expectation. Just a few minutes ago, they were lying half dead on the ground, but now they could actually run out and bite people. My heart sank. The probability of our survival was getting smaller and smaller. I fumbled around in the police officer's pocket for a long time and finally found the handcuff key. I opened the handcuffs, moved my numb wrists, and started looking for their guns and bullets. Phew, I was lucky. There was a pistol under the seat. I turned my head and reached over to feel for the spare magazine on the police officer. Fuck, suddenly, a huge force came from under me, pushing my body up to the car roof. The police officer in the passenger seat, who had been dead for more than 10 minutes, pounced on me like a wild beast. I sat on the console of the passenger seat, using my knees to firmly hold his neck and both hands to press his wrists. We were in a stalemate. Outside the car, there was a bang 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 sound of knocking. I took a quick look. There were 4 or 5 zombies banging on the car body. Click click click. I looked up. The zombie head that had fallen into the car, with a few pieces of broken flesh hanging from its neck, was slowly moving towards me from the back seat. I was in a desperate situation again. 18 before, I had never faced death directly. Even a few hours ago, I still thought I had a chance to live, but at this moment, I was truly desperate. Die. Just die like this. Close my eyes and let them eat me. It'll all be over. I'm so tired. Bang bang bang. The zombies around the car fell to the ground one after another. A spray of blood burst from the center of the police officer's forehead, and his brains and red blood cells splattered all over my face. The zombie head that was about to crawl to my leg was also blown to pieces, and the stinking dark-colored plasma splashed everywhere. Suddenly, I felt a coolness in my mouth and, without thinking, swallowed. Comrade, come out quickly. I'm almost out of bullets. I retched violently. I didn't have time to think about what I had just swallowed. I quickly got out of the car. It was the police captain. The captain had come to save me. I was so moved that tears welled up in my eyes. It felt so good to be saved. I briefly reported the situation we were facing to the captain. The captain frowned, realizing how unsafe the situation in the warehouse was. There must be some infected people among the crowd. The captain and I took our guns and ran all the way back to the warehouse. We pulled open the rolling door and rushed into the warehouse. All kinds of noisy sounds and screams filled the warehouse. Run. That person has gone crazy. He's bitten half of his wife's neck off. Ah, help me. I don't want to die. Everyone, get down. The captain shouted and fired a warning shot into the air. The crowd finally quieted down. I'll count to 3. If anyone doesn't get down, I'll shoot. In the face of bullets, everyone was unexpectedly obedient. Only 2 or 3 extremely distorted infected people were still chasing after the crowd. The captain was a good shot. With 3 shots, he hit their heads one by one. The crowd let out exclamations and screams. The 3 infected people were all killed. The police can't just kill people casually. Yeah, people who go crazy should just be tied up and locked up. How can you kill them? Just because you're the police doesn't mean you can do whatever you want. My brother was just sick, and you killed him. I'll see you in court. The crowd started arguing again. Listening to these voices, the veins on my forehead bulged. No wonder in end of the world novels, the male lead always likes to kill the saints first. These people are really unreasonable. There's no point in saving them. Listen up. The corpses that fell from the sky aren't ordinary corpses. They're zombies. They can bite and eat people. If you don't believe me, look at the people I killed. 19. The people who had clearly been killed with their heads blown off still had their limbs twitching. The red muscles on their severed necks were still moving, and their mouths were constantly opening and closing. Captain, there are still many infected people in the crowd. I have a way to find them, or the consequences will be disastrous. Please believe me. I looked at the captain seriously, my tone solemn. The captain looked at me somewhat doubtfully but still called a few police officers to help me find the infected people. I scanned the huge crowd. There were at least 2 or 3 dozen people whose lifespans were decreasing rapidly. The situation was too chaotic. If I didn't take extreme measures, it would be too late. I grabbed out the few people whose numbers were almost reaching 0 according to the size of the lifespan numbers. Some of them looked ashen-faced, some struggled desperately and cursed. I remained expressionless and unmoved. In less than 3 minutes, as their lifespans gradually reached 0, the captain and I quickly killed these people. The crowd fell silent. There are still a few infected people who haven't come forward. The number of bullets is limited. If you live, you'll only kill many innocent people. I'm sorry, but you have to leave. The warehouse, as I pointed them out, more than a dozen people were gradually pushed out of the crowd. There were old people, middle-aged people, and an 8 or 9-year-old girl. The people around looked at them with eyes full of hatred, cold and disgusted. "Dad, Mom, don't you want me anymore?" The little girl, with only 5 minutes left on her head, was holding a dirty teddy bear, standing among the infected people. She was like a trapped young animal, looking at us blankly and helplessly. Her mother knelt on the ground, crying. She seemed reluctant and wanted to go over and hug the little girl, but was held back tightly by the girl's father. "Sigh, tie them all up first. If there's any situation later, we'll deal with it." The captain couldn't bear it. When it came to children, the bottom line of humanity had to be lowered again and again. 20, as these people were controlled. The numbers above the heads of the crowd finally started to increase, gradually returning to about 1 month. Unfortunately, that night, I developed a high fever. Lying on the cold floor, I felt like there were 100,000 ants gnawing at my nerves. My whole body was as hot as red-hot iron. I fell asleep vaguely last night. When I woke up, I was extremely thirsty. I casually picked up a large bucket of purified water and actually drank half of it in one go. Since when did I have so much strength? This was a large bucket of water, but I picked it up so easily, it seemed I didn't even use much force. I was lost in thought. I stretched my limbs and jumped hard. I actually jumped more than 3 meters high, almost hitting the ceiling. A little boy beside me stared at me blankly, as if he had seen a superhero. I was shocked, and so were the people around me. The captain heard the news and came over to ask me what was going on. After carefully reviewing what had happened yesterday, I told him my guess. There must be something in the zombie head that was blown off in the car. What I had accidentally swallowed in the car should explain my current physical condition. To verify my guess, the captain and I, along with a capable police officer, decided to go out and catch a few zombies to see what was in their heads. We took 2 machetes and slipped out of the warehouse. The newly acquired strength gave me an indescribable sense of comfort. With a random swing of the knife, I could cut a zombie in half, as if I were cutting tofu. After taking down more than a dozen zombies in a row, we finally found a jet black crystal in one of the zombie heads. Back in the warehouse, the captain hesitated for a long time, then pinched his nose and swallowed the black crystal. Sure enough, he also started to have a fever. Early the next morning, the captain happily came to me to show me the changes in his body. He stretched his hands forward. As he gradually exerted force, his hands actually turned into 2 cold, light-emitting blades. The onlookers looked at him with envy. But I couldn't be happy at all. 21, in my sight, the captain's lifespan, which was 1 month yesterday, was now only half of that. I looked at myself in the mirror with a bitter face, looking at the countdown on my forehead. 13 days, 23 hours. My chest felt tight. I told the captain that this thing could mutate the body, but it seemed to consume lifespan. Our remaining lives were only 2 weeks. The captain, who had been as happy as a child just now, fell silent. He lit a cigarette and gave me one. Just as I lit it and hadn't exhaled the first puff of smoke, "I'll strangle you bastard. Why didn't you say this before I ate it?" I was strangled by the captain until my eyes rolled back. The people around quickly pulled us apart. "What are you yelling about? You ate it yourself. No one forced you. I only found out today myself." The captain sighed, and we both sat together with gloomy faces, smoking. There were still more than 300 people in the warehouse, and food and water were always big problems. If we didn't figure out a way, when the supplies ran out, death would be the only thing waiting for everyone. After the incident in the car, my fear of death wasn't as strong anymore. What I was most worried about was my parents. I was afraid that if I died and they didn't, the living would be the ones to suffer the most. "Captain, Hugo, come over here and take a look." The urgent voice of a police officer pulled me out of my thoughts. The captain and I got up and ran towards him. We ran to the ventilation opening on the top of the warehouse, which was about at the 2nd floor level from the ground. Outside, there were zombies walking, jumping, and running everywhere. Some zombies, who were missing arms or legs, grew back the missing limbs after devouring human corpses. Some abnormally large and strange-shaped zombies were even preying on other zombies, and then their bodies grew rapidly. We gasped in horror. These damned creatures could even recover and evolve. Back on the 1st floor, we quickly gathered several leading workers and explained the severity of the situation. One worker said that the nearest supply point to our factory was about 20 kilometers away, and there was a government-stocked granary there. If we could move there, food and water would no longer be a problem. After a vote, everyone decided to set off in a week. The most difficult thing now is how to safely move these people to the granary. 22, the zombies were evolving. If we didn't take action, the warehouse would surely be breached eventually, and we'd all be eaten. In times of crisis, the glory of human nature could shine like the sun. Without any ideological mobilization, more than 30 workers came to me voluntarily, asking to take the black crystals. Their reason was simple: if the captain and I could be like candles, burning ourselves to light up the way for the crowd, then they could too. Which man didn't dream of being a hero when he was young? The captain and I were touched and took on the task of hunting for black crystals. We took turns leading the team. When we almost cleared all the zombies in the factory, we finally obtained enough black crystals. Unfortunately, during the process, 5 young men were infected, and we had to kill them with heavy hearts. Strangely, after the 30 people took the black crystals, they were all like me. Their strength increased, but their lifespan shortened, and none of them had special abilities like the captain. The night before the departure, we equipped everyone with weapons. Some people held bamboo spears, and some held Molotov cocktails. We brought enough dry rations. If everything went smoothly, the 20-plus kilometer journey would only take half a day. At this point, there was no need for pre-battle mobilization. Success meant life, and failure meant death. Everyone was on high alert. The captain split the distorted factory gate with his doubled blades, and our group set off on the street in a mighty way. To my surprise, the street was empty, not a single corpse in sight. The desolate street was filled with a strange silence, only the empty shop doors creaking in the breeze. 23. We walked along the planned route for a full 6 hours before gradually approaching the granary. On the way, we didn't encounter any danger, neither humans nor zombies. If it weren't for the bloodstains and remains everywhere, I would have thought I'd just had a nightmare about zombies. Hugo, do you hear the sound of thunder? The captain stopped me. We were now less than 1 kilometer away from the granary. I calmed down and listened carefully. There did seem to be some rumbling sounds coming from afar. The ground started to tremble slightly, and I suddenly felt a strong sense of unease. Goosebumps covered my body. I stared intently at the tall building in the distance. Behind the building was the granary base. Boom! A deafening explosion rang out beside us. The hard asphalt cement road was filled with dust as countless small stones and rocks shot out in all directions like rain. I didn't know how many people lost their lives in an instant. I was thrown up by the shockwave and slammed hard against the wall. A sharp pain shot through my chest. I felt like several of my ribs were broken. Before I could deal with my injuries, the dust cleared, and a huge monster came into view. I think I knew why there were no people or zombies on the way here. 24. Have you ever seen a giant made up of countless heads? Today, I did. Its body was 6 or 7 meters tall, and every part of it was stuffed with densely packed heads. They were roaring, howling, and struggling, like wild dogs with their necks tied. Only, what was tied might be their souls. The monster casually picked up a few crushed corpses and put them into its mouth to chew. Scarlet liquid dripped from the corners of its mouth, some splashing onto the road. Ah, it's a monster. Run for your lives. The crowd panicked and scattered in all directions like headless flies. The captain led several people and rushed forward. I endured the pain, struggled to find the pistol I had dropped aside, and prepared to shoot at it. Damn it, die, monster! The captain's doubled blades hacked hard at the monster's ankle. A splash of black blood spurted out, and one of the heads on the monster's ankle was cut open, letting out an ear-piercing howl. The monster seemed not to feel the pain. It calmly stopped eating and turned its countless compound eyes towards the people who were attacking it. Bang! With a casual wave of its hand, the monster swatted a worker into minced meat. Just like swatting a fly, my eyes were bloodshot with anger. I aimed at the monster's head and started shooting continuously. The bullets hit the monster, making dull thuds. Sadly, it didn't even turn its head to look at me. Our attacks were like tickling it. It walked around casually, continuing to grab people and stuff them into its mouth to chew. The captain looked at me in despair, slumped to the ground, his lips trembling. If the monster's appetite was big enough, none of us would be able to escape today. 25. Actually, I hate being a hero, but I hate seeing this hell like world even more. People are as insignificant as feathers, and lives are as fragile as wild grass. Even if I'm just an ordinary and humble wild grass, I've had enough. I don't want to kneel and submit to this damned fate anymore. I took out the more than 10 remaining black crystals from the last hunt. With the blood at the corner of my mouth, I swallowed them one by one like eating broad beans. With each one I ate, I felt like a fire was ignited in my stomach. The fire ignited my blood, muscles, and even my hair. My heart seemed to be about to jump out of my mouth. The tearing pain came in waves, as if countless wild beasts were biting and gnawing at my soul and my mind. I turned my head to look at the glass on the wall. The lifespan above my head was dropping rapidly like a faucet that had been turned on. I only had 15 minutes of lifespan left. I picked up 2 machetes, leaped up, and pounced towards the giant monster. Poochie! I split a string of heads on the monster's body with one blow. The monster let out an ear-splitting howl. So you fucking know it hurts. Do you know how much pain I'm in right now? I chopped off half of the monster's palm with one strike. Then I was kicked in the back by it and flew dozens of meters away. I coughed up a large mouthful of bright red blood, which dripped onto the ground and steamed up. It seemed that the black crystals not only enhanced my physical strength but also my body's toughness, but this way of fighting wouldn't work. My knives were too short to cause fatal damage to the monster. Just as I was about to get up and continue the fight, a hand tightly grabbed my wrist. Hugo, does it hurt like hell when you eat too many of these things? The captain was holding 5 black crystals in his hand, looking at me with a complex expression. It doesn't hurt, I grinned. Enduring the pain, the captain swallowed the black crystals in one go. He suddenly covered his mouth, his eyes wide open. One of his hands slowly stretched out his middle finger at me. Damn it, cough, fuck, you're really not a good guy. Hugo, drop the knife in your hand, and let's go together and kill this bastard. The captain stood up straight, spreading his hands. His body began to crystallize at a visible speed. His waist and abdomen on both sides turned into blades, and his neck became a sword hilt. At that moment, the captain was shining brightly in the sun. I seemed to see Jesus. I watched as the captain's lifespan number quickly reached 0. I didn't know how he managed it. Give me a few minutes, brother. I'll come to you after I finish this. I muttered a few words, picked up the huge blade, and soared into the air. Die, you monster. 26. It was the rainy season during the Ghost Festival, in the center of the Martyrs Cemetery. Mom, why are we giving 2 bouquets of flowers to this uncle? The little boy looked at the middle-aged woman beside him in confusion. Silly child, do you see the big sword on the tomb? There are 2 people in this tomb. That sword also represents a very great uncle. Can a sword turn into a person? It sounds really amazing. The raindrops drifted by, and the people left, leaving the place empty. Suddenly, there was a slight cracking sound on the huge sword. Crash after a flash of lightning, a thunderclap roared. The soil on the top of the tomb seemed to be moving. A pale hand stretched out from the top of the tomb.